Um, I read a passage somewhere and it was talking about the establishment of the Gregorian calendar and how the temporal powers need to do it. And I looked at the dates in which they, was striving to do this. So it corresponds around the time of what they call the Dum Diversis, which led to a series of papal bulls that was about taking the land from the Saracens and the pagans. That would be us, if you didn't know. However, we have been so inundated with racism and false history that we be really absorbing it to the point that we think that the people who are in these places then are the people that was there back in the day, when in reality the world was more like this and is still like this. You know what I'm saying? And so because of that, we then tend to create a form of mind control within ourselves to justify a history and a time stream that technically really doesn't exist. So this, as a hypothesis, is me saying if the present time stream or time calendar that we base past, present, and future on was invented at a certain time, let's say 1581 to 1582, and prior to that tied to that time, there was no real designation between what we call the ancient world, the classical world, the medieval world. All of those worlds were simultaneously happening at the same time, in which there were literally still giants and unexplainable things in the planet at this time. And so if that means that up until that point the past did not exist, then that means then that what we perceive as the future is based upon a time that does not exist. Therefore, any time stream that we give it, when we say the Moors went in the 7th century, that's the 7th century based upon the Gregorian calendar, with the year 1582 being the year 1. You understand what I'm saying? The same way when the Nicene calendar, the Nicene people got together and made the year 1, under the Constantine thing, made the year 1 based on the birth of Christ. You understand what I'm saying? So if we are striving to establish a time frame in which we say, okay, well, we ruled here and we ruled there, I think what the problem is really is that we are striving to justify our history to people who are claiming not to be a part of our history. So in doing an to that, right around that time, this is when this 21 Savage thing popped off, right? So then when I did the nods to that, I did the nods to, well, the fact that he is British by way of Dominica, because the people in the island of Dominica have made themselves and still have allowed themselves to be a protectorate under the same people that have been exploiting everything from the beginning. So that means he, as a British subject, is in league with the United States, being that he's under the jurisdiction of the United States, which may explain why, being his father was a British agent, so-called holistic doctor, one of the only holistic doctors that is seen has not been murdered. Y'all know about that, right? Y'all heard about that? They done killed over, 80, 88, 89 holistic doctors all over the world. But he happens to still be alive, and he's a doctor, holistic doctor to the stars, while his son basically disavowed him and said that he was a deadbeat and didn't have no relationship with him. Right, we're looking at an operative. So if we're looking at an operative of what? So when I started to do the knowledge to that, I was like, well, wow, that's interesting. That you have this many people who, you have this brother who used to wear straight up and down is a bankhead goon. You know what I'm saying? He's a straight banger. He done been in jail. He done shot people. He done sold dope. He done flipped heroin. You know what I'm saying? At least that's what they saying that he did. You understand? So as a 21 Savage, he has already been through the ritual with his best friend and got killed. Like it's a script, is what I'm saying. So when I started to analyze, okay, well, where did this script, how did this script start? Who started this script? The same people who started this script is the same people been running the script since they invented this temporal power that we refer to as physical time, that really is based on energy and perception, right? So we're rational beings, correct? So when I started to do the knowledge to that, I said, okay, well, let me see who else is out there like that. You know what I'm saying? So wait, let me get this out. These are just some of them. I don't want to waste mad time when these people, I just want to illustrate my point visually. Boom. Cool Herc, Jamaica. Bambaataa, Jamaican. 21 Savage, Dominica, Britain. Moni Love, British. Slick Rick, British. Akon, Senegalese, Sudanian. MC Light, Trinidad. Nicki Minaj, Trinidad. Wyclef Jean, Haiti. Procazarel, Haiti. Kobe Bryant, Italy. Drake, Canada. China Mac, China. Marcus Garvey, Jamaica. Tekashi 69, Mexico. Hugo Weaving, the nigga from The Matrix, Mr. Smith, he was born in Nigeria. Bruce Willis was born in West Germany. Okay? So do the nods to that. Let's look at Kool Herc, Bambaataa, 21 Savage. Well, Kool Herc and Bambaataa alone. These are the founders. The founders. Yeah, Marcus Garvey was born in Jamaica. So think about that. You have somebody that was born in Jamaica that wants to bring us back to Africa. Think about that. So we also need to look into the relationship between the UNIA, aspects of the UNIA, and the American Colonial Society and its relationship to Liberia. Yeah, Shine, thank you. That's another one. Shine, Belize, by way of Israel, right? But look at that. Shine, been in jail for murder, right? Busting somebody. Bambaataa, molestation, right? Kool Herc, they had something about him that he may have raped a girl back in the day, right? Slick Rick went to jail for murder, shooting his American cousin, right? Do the knowledge. Do the knowledge. Nicki Minaj, her brother is locked up right now for pedophilia, right? Right now. Look, Wyclef. Look, look what he did to Haiti. Look what Wyclef did to Haiti because with him being a rapper. Do the knowledge. Look at Tekashi. Tekashi 69 whole style came from a Moor named Supernova Slum. Look at Supernova Slum's old videos where he was rapping and all that. Look at his videos. Look where he at. He in the same place Tekashi start doing his thing at. Look at him and then look at Tekashi's swag and see what I'm saying. So look at what I'm saying to you. I'm saying that these are people who have shaped the world's opinion of you as a Moorish American, as a so-called black man or black woman in America. Do you understand what I'm saying? Do the announce to that. Has anybody ever heard of something called the New Madrid Earthquake? Never heard of that, have you? Well, for those that don't know, it was an earthquake that happened in New Madrid, which is here in America, in 1811, the year before 1812. And that situation led to worldwide devastation based upon the fact it was a part of a worldwide flood that basically buried everything and everybody, which may or may not be the result of what we in the Bible, those of us who are Moors and understand the connection with us as being, part of the tribes of Canaan and Ham and all of that, you will understand it from the perspective of what's called the deluge, which was the time in which everything was, the waters had receded. But you got to understand, if there was a worldwide flood, just like there's a worldwide anything, in order for that to recede, people act like when you read the Bible that just stopped happening. What if all of these tsunamis and all of these things that we see as world disasters or whatever are actually the manifestation or the result of these things still settling, and the people who moved into everything once it was flipped up basically orchestrated all of this stuff to get us caught up? Because from what I've been able to research, yeah, but the thing is, we've been talking about this. We was talking about it. This discussion was in the conscious community when we was debating who shot the noses off the Sphinx in them. Because during that debate, we would get into understandings and different things about, well, if we read about Egypt and all of that, they said that at a certain time there was a famine and there was a drought, which means that up until that time that there was this famine and there was this drought, it was lush with vegetation. If you and I go to Egypt right now, we go into the desert and we go with a Geiger counter, there are elements of that place that's still highly radioactive. How do you explain that? They don't. So what they do is they tell you aliens built the pyramids and all this other crap, and they got us looking in the wrong direction. You know what I'm saying? They got us looking into some sort of 1 second. They go into some sort of regression, and we start to again. You know, when you read, when you was a kid and used to read stuff, and then you put something there in the word, like you put a the or a there, and it's not, and it's not, and it's not there. It's the same thing. That is the same result of when we see something that somebody does and we make an excuse for it, and we kind of like, put it to the back without really addressing it if it bothers us. Because some stuff is small stuff, but in the end, it'd be the small stuff that lead to the big stuff. So it's better to deal with it or whatever now or whatever. Sorry. So what we're seeing on the TV, like we already would been talking, like when they start talking about this stuff, Tartaria and all of this stuff, like this is what we was talking about when we was 5%ers, when we talked about how the whole planet was named Asia. Khalid Muhammad told us that, and he declared that he was a Moor. And he said during that period, the Moors, the Asiatics, ruled the world. So when you look at the Asiatic diaspora in terms of us as Moors of the so-called Asiatic race, we are definitive people that are not necessarily tied to the other people outside of us all being a part of humanity. The same way that a donkey is not a horse is the same way you are not a phenotypical African. And no matter how they try to make you into that, no matter how you try to assimilate into that, unless that is directly a part of your ancestral DNA, that's still you customizing something to fit your worldview. So we already got pictures of them with the batteries and all of that. We already got pictures of the Moor. We already been talking about all of this. But the thing is, when they put it in these contexts and they use words like Tartary, but then don't mention things like Barbary, what it does is it throws off the equilibrium of our people, because then it looked like we trying to like tack onto them when this is something that they got from us. We've been talking about this. But for instance, like when you see this, you ever see pictures of these Moors holding these things? Now look, this the king of Hungary, right? From the house of Anjou. So when they talk about the Jews of Europe or the Jews of England, or the Jews of old Europe. They talking about the Anjus, the Anjudites, who the Ein or the An is the Asiatic connection, because that binds them to the Ein Nu. And those are Asiatic people who, although being these guys were in Europe, they still had connections to the Far East because of the Moors. King James England was established in 927. The Holy Roman Empire was established in 962. Okay? The so-called Roman Empire literally fell in 430 something, right? And then that plunged everybody basically into the Dark Ages in Europe until the 4, 5, 6, 7. So for 3 centuries, everybody that was in Europe that was with albinism, with no education, was basically plunged into little darkness. Whereas Moors like this, we living in high, or they living in high splendor, high culture, because they're still Christianized and they have relationships to Byzantium. So that also gives them, again, an Asiatic influence, because Byzantium had relationships with the Barbary Moors, right, in Andalus and Spain, as well as in the Americas or whatever, as well as the so-called Tartarian Moors, i.e. Gengis and them, Kublai Khan and them back in the days. But you see in their hands, you see these things in their hands? You see a lot of these pictures with these people with these things in their hand, especially in Europe. You see them in America. You see them all over the world with the royalty, but this is what you see. In one hand, they have a sword or a cross or an ark or whatever. In the other hand, they holding an orb. Even in ancient Egypt, you see it. You know what those are? Okay, let me show you. Okay. That's the thing. The little things in these types of, we've been watching these DVDs and going and asking these questions and debating who's related to who and what is what and all of this stuff. But in the end, like, it be the simple stuff that throws us off from what the stuff really is and who we were or are in it. If I can just find this image. I hate that when I pull it up and I can't. Give me 1 second, y'all. Oh, here we go. Had another one. All right, I'll just show you guys this one. Sorry. They're batteries. They're actually electromagnetically charged batteries that were used to power the dominion that they were in through ancient technology that was based on the elements and how to use the elements in means of energy, renewable energy conduction. Batteries. So one of these things could power a whole city. And so it was always entrusted to whoever was the ruler or the taker of the city, because this was a custom that went all the way back when we, the descendants that are law of Ham and Noah and Cush and all of that. Now I'm speaking of them as genetic forebears based upon the global evidence of there being many worldwide catastrophes that culminated in the destruction of whole civilizations and the antediluvian people that existed in those civilizations, who your ancestors were ordained by Allah to go into these vast megalithic structured kingdoms they built and take them. This right here, this one battery right here they found in Iraq can power a whole city. Or excuse me, let me exaggerate. They said that this thing is still active. I mean, if they hook it up to something, it's still going to work. And you see the 3 strand lines on it, right? Look. It's the exact same thing. But what they did, the Christian Moors did, they put the cross on top of it because it showed that they were related or from the original people of the 4 winds. The original people of the 4 winds were the people who came from the 4 corners after Atlantis fell and established the kingdoms. When you read the Bible or the book of Enoch, really the first book of Enoch, the other ones is, the first book of Enoch is the one you want to deal with if you want to get into the genetic creation of these things. And for some reason, Allah wanted us to do away with them. I'm saying that those orbs, those little orbs right there, are so full of energy that were left over from a part of ancient technologies that our ancestors both enhanced and helped create as they were passed down as spoils of war from when we laid dominion over the entire earth in the name of Allah. This is talked about in the book of Deuteronomy. It's talked about in the book of Kings. It's talked about in the book of Judges. It says that the walls of Canaan were immeasurable, were too high to even be seen. So imagine us going somewhere and seeing these walls that's at least 4,000 meters high. You can't even imagine that. They said the cedar trees of Lebanon was so big that nobody could see the top of them. And that the fruit that they produced and the oxygen they produced led to the over-oxidation and the enhancement of everything around. You understand? They got you thinking that people your size built this stuff. And then if not, you don't buy that, then they tell you that it was aliens and all these other people. When these aliens and these other people are descended from the people, them people we put in context. When you read the story of read the Bible, read the Circle 7, they talk about the Canaanites. It says the Canaanites, the Hamathites, right? The Amorites, and this. In the Bible, all of those people are giants. They don't show you pictures like this of Kemet. Who he's stomping on. Look, he's a giant. Look at his horse. Look how small these people are. So we making this up. So they just drew this to show what? Oh, symbolically, this shows how big he towered over them. So you mean to tell me these people are didactically opposed to anything that is not mathematically down to the minute minute, minute decimal. But they just gonna create some fantastic stuff that don't exist in the world around them, just out of their imagination. That's what we saying. Yeah, read the analogs of the Song Empire, and the Song Empire was the Asiatic Empire connected to Kublai Khan. Read it. I ain't even gonna go into what that say, but go in and read it. Read what they say about the Moors or what they brought them. Get this book. Because what we're dealing with is not just the repression of our history as Moorish Americans. We're talking about the repression of our direct integral participation in world events and the financial remuneration that we're supposed to receive from them. So in order to get us to not do that from the beginning of, I would say from the beginning, but in our modern time sphere, we would say around the time of the New Madrid earthquake, which again was a worldwide result of the receding waters of the deluge that had been constantly been happening. And so afterwards, these people basically just walked into places that we already had. I'm gonna show you how ill it is. What am I trying to show you? Yes, just that comet is related to the blue plasmasphere burst that you seen over New York the other day. That's all a part of the same thing. So again, research them batteries. Look, here goes somebody else with one. She got it inside of a clock. But we're not doing the knowledge because we're still looking at ourselves through their eyes. We're looking at our eyes through the eyes of a caveman, and he's only not going to give us the story. He's just going to flip it. When they talking about the aliens, they talking about us. They say that they don't know who built the pyramids, but then when you read the actual documentation from the actual peoples that was there, you find out not only was they Muslims, but the people they say built it didn't. It was actual giants, and they put pictures up with it. I'll show you right now. The Africans practice genetic over there. They have a custom of self-genetic modification. You understand? And over here, we wasn't really all like that. Those of us that was like that were those of us that had those types of relations in our family tree. And sometimes for treaties and things like that, we would, unify with people to maintain. Everybody know Russia. Y'all know Russia. Y'all heard of Peter the Great. This Peter the Great. This is why they hate the Russians, because the Russians didn't go through the Reconquista. The Russians didn't go through the Renaissance. They kept all of the old stuff from when Byzantium fell. Because remember, when Byzantium fell, it fell to Mohammed II. Right? But it was one family ruling everything. So those people had to be wiped out. So there was a group of people, when we keep talking about the Illuminati and all these people, you can't talk about them without talking about the Alumbrados. The Alumbrados was those Moors who were part of those orders, those ancient orders that chose to stay in Europe, act like they was Christians, and then fortify the return of the sultans. This was what their original mission was, right? When you read about them. Word got out to the budding powers around the 15th century that this was going down. So what they needed to do was set up their own version. So Ignatius Loyola, the founder of the Jesuits, he created a order called the Good Society of Jesus and became the first black pope. And then he had a bodyguard named Contalini. Contalini and them was Venetians. The Venetians were a part of the old, what they seen as the old tradition of the old Phoenician Empire, an empire based on trade. Okay, and they were, to the most part, Latin speakers, based upon them, in a sense, growing up under Moorish rule. And once the Moors got deposed in the 1400s, those Moors who wanted to maintain lands, or those Moors that wanted to fight against Spain, or those Moors that wanted whatever, would go to Venice or the Venetians to get their thing popping. And eventually the Venetians would find ways to corrupt these Moors. And so when they went back to their own kingdoms, they would use blackmail and try to like say that they would start rumors that they was eating pork and things like this in order to keep their money. But then they would flip their money, give the money back, and now this created this off-balance relationship. This was because the Venetians were followers. Old Carthage. Now, this is the amalgamated period. So all these people I'm seeing on your screen, this right here is from the Royal Abbey. This is a picture done of life, or statue of life, allegedly, of Shakespeare, or Shakespeare. This is King James. This is Mary, Queen of Scots. And this is his father, King Henry I. They were a part of, well, look at this. That's what I mean with Moors. Like, we gotta get on it. When you know the history and you accept your ancestry, you don't forsake one ancestor over the other. So yeah, these guys who were Hebrews, King James and them. There's a book called Primitive Black Nations by a guy named Rafinesque, who is also a piece of crap too, but he did keep it real with a lot, leaving a lot of the ancient information and names. Anyway, in that book, he talks about James coming to Andalus, getting the records, and then going back and having Shakespeare and his company basically draft the Bible by 1611, because he was trying to stop the dirty papacy. These ones right here. See these ones? See how you got the fez on? But then under in the tabernacle, he making the deal with the black devil. See that? So Shakespeare, the author was named, the book is called Primitive Black Nations. Shakespeare, who they call Shakespeare, again, put his essence or whatever in it. And what he was basically doing was writing stories about the fall of the Hebraic line of Moors, who were now going to be displaced by the dirty Venetians, who was going to use the wild cave people to basically bust up their kingdom and then assume their position. This was started by Ignatius Loyola and the so-called amalgamated Venetians. These people who were descended in some ways from ancient Phoenicians, like we are, but they chose to deny the soul. So their worship of Apollo, so they acted like Christians, but they was really pagans. So they would worship Apollo, and they would put on their buildings, they would put the winged lion with the wings. That's their symbol. So anytime you see that, that was the symbol that they adopted, because that was the symbol that the Phoenicians used to put on the front of their ships. You understand? Hannibal and them. So they're basically saying that we're carrying on this tradition of a trade empire. But unlike old Phoenicia, unlike old thing, at least with Phoenicia, they was actually also producing goods. They was producing things, and they were going around the whole globe as the direct descendants of everybody and maintaining the shores and the international tradeways of the world. You understand what I'm saying? Because we were already seafarers, because they were all the direct descendants of the direct descendants of the direct descendants of those Moors and those original Asiatics that were made in the image of Allah and set to put dominion over the whole world. So when you hear this says what? Hibernia Rex Jacobus, right? Hibernia Rex Jacobus, Magna Britannia Francae. So it basically says the king of Britain, France, and Hibernia. Hibernia is the Hebrides, which we now call Scotland, Ireland, Wales, all of that. And the dominions of the so-called Hebrews, because he was their king under the fact that they were the children or the house of Yaqub. They telling you right here. So when we talk about, don't they call their flag the Union Jack, right? Jack is short for Yaqub. Islam. James was running the whole thing. He was trying to, in some instances, trying to marry back into the line over here, while at the same time canonizing what he saw the dark papacy and these niggas doing, which is now they trying to basically create a puppet system where it looked like the white people running it, and then meanwhile they receiving all of the checks and the benefits. And because they don't believe in the soul, they believe that the soul is only expressed as the person is alive, because they say when the person dies, the only evidence that you can see that the soul exists is in a living person. So they rejected creationism. They rejected the idea that Allah was eternal and that the Holy Spirit or the soul was the evidence of Allah made flesh. James and them was trying to shut that down. So the oligarchical Venetians, they start now trying to bury everything. First, they got to defame him and get rid of him because their Bible got to rock. But you got to understand, there was another Bible before this Bible that they was rocking with called the Geneva Bible from 1599. And that Bible, again, was what? That Bible was the one where all of the black people is referred to as Moors in it. Go get it and read it. You see what I'm talking about. When you read about Micah, the prophet Micah of the Moorishites, this is the Moors. This is the line of David, of which we are the descendants of as well. Because as Canaanites, we represent those ancient giants that was actually Canaanites who then married the daughters of men and then fought within the family. But there was a unification between, in the Bible, this is what it say, as well as the Ramayana. Read the Ramayana text from India, because this is all allegedly happening at the same time. You dig? They got us faking right, going left. So James, they start spreading rumors about him that he had sex with his mother and this and that. You dig? So what Shakespeare started to do was write plays, or Shakespeare Company started writing plays with the Moors and them to get hip, to put the monarchy and them on to what was really happening with these amalgamated Moors trying to take everything over. This is why in the play Othello basically is representative of James. You know what I'm saying? And Iago is representative of the Venetian, of Contalini. This dude I'm talking to you about. It's called the Geneva Bible from 1599. So remember, they created the BC thing in 1582, 81. But in 1599, they already rocking with the Geneva Bible. Then by 1611, he come out with the revised version of that, which is now threatening everybody's understanding because now it's leading people to read in Europa again. Then he's trying to establish kingdoms over here through the East India companies. So they got to figure out a way to dead that. And so the Pope and them they want to break the connection between the original dynasty over there that's trying to come back over here and get right between those of us that already had dynasties and empires over here. So they got to break that up. So what they do, they get the Pope to do the Dum Diversus in 1533, which leads to what? The Crusades, which is what? A giant land grab. Why? Because the ancient technology and all that stuff is out there. While the rest of everybody in Europe is in the dark, these castles is being lit up. They towns is being lit up by renewable energy. These niggas got all the stuff that the Egyptians got, that the ancient Yaqubian tribes got, because they were the ones who took it from the ancient giants that we replaced and made our vassals, of which then some of us interbred into them, which explains people like Hakeem Olajuwon and Michael Jordan and the rest of these people. These people just ain't come from nowhere. But they got us, again, thinking right, going left. They got us thinking that the Bible's evil, no, the Bible is whatever you want it to be. That's what type of spell book that is. It's the word of God if God is in your heart. It's the word of the devil if the devil's in your heart. That's how you know it's a temporal flux capacitor. It's whatever you want to use it for, you could freak it. Tell me I'm wrong. That's how everybody has used it. Why? Because that's the spell that the Shakespeare Company put on the whole thing when they started to create it, to hide the demise of the Moorish Empire. To show you can't trust niggas like Iago, Othello. You can't trust the Prince of Denmark, Hamlet, because they all in bed with the Phoenicians. And the Phoenicians is under the illusion that they are somehow a real descendant from these people, when the original Phoenicians, Carthage and them, they was against dirty Rome and all of that. You understand what I'm saying? If we going by what they history talking about, when we talking about the Greeks and the Romans, them pictures they showing you is new. This is who it is. This is who the people they talking about. I just showed you in Byzantium, all of the pictures is black. So everybody was black. A direct quote from Benjamin Franklin said, everybody is black. Asia, Africa, America, the Britons, the Swedes. When did they become white? They became this during the time that the Venetians probably figured out how to time certain political upheavals with the rise and fall of the deluge waters. That's still happening. It's still happening. Where these floods coming from? Oh, Harp did it. Really? Really? You actually seen Harp create it? You seen them create the machine? I seen them create clouds. You know what I'm saying? That's what I see them create. I don't. What I'm starting to say, brothers and sisters, is look, we got to get into who. Okay, so when they say, oh, the Illuminati, who's who? Who? Do you even know what Columbus signature? You say Columbus did this and that. Do you even know what Columbus signature even looked like? If you've seen it, if somebody said, oh, this is Columbus signature, throw it. No. And I'm not talking about y'all specifically. I'm just saying us in general. We're using and talking about these people, and we trying to verify who he is when you don't even know what his signature looked like. So how are you going to tell me how many ships he had, who he came with, all this? How is he trying to get to India when India, the concept of India at the time did not exist? That place was called Hindustan. And those people were Asiatics, a part of the Mauryan dynasty. You could read Consecrated Talisman volumes 1 to 3 on that. You could read Ancient African Presence in Early Asia on that. You could read Saga BC on that. You could read about the Mongol invasion in the 13th century. There's a book on that. So we keep talking about Columbus. Well, why ain't you tell me? You tell me about Marco Polo. You tell me he met Genghis Khan, but you ain't telling me that Marco Polo, but Genghis Khan basically tried to reunify the whole empire by sending whole fleets, giant ships over here with giants and mastodons and mammoths and elephants and all types of stuff over here to shut everything down. They ain't talking about that. Why not? Case in point, this is Columbus's signature. Sasaximum, Saskatchewan, Shekemexum. Same consonants. Okay? So, okay, well, what other evidence do we got of that? Okay, well, what about this? How we explain this? How we explain this? How this dude walking a giraffe like you walk a pit bull? How we doing that? How we explaining that? Okay, well, that's a artistic rep. No. How you gonna tell me? How you gonna tell me what it is? And you don't even. And I'm talking about these Egyptian scholar people telling you that that's Egypt over there, Africa. Look, there is approximately 30% of land on the eastern side of the Mississippi, and approximately 70% of land on the other, right? Western Mississippi. In Egypt over there's 30% of the land over there and 30% of the land over here. Missouri is Mizraim in the Bible. So when we talk about us as Moors being descendant of the Moabites and the Canaanites and these people, they were not those who, as we stop being giants of stature, we start now becoming giants in the mind. Because think about it. Think about what it would be like for me and you right now to go conquer a city like that. And they've been showing us in all the pictures and we just not seeing it. Look, this is a picture of Rome. Look how tall this dude is. To this dude, to this dude. Look. Am I bugging? Look how so look how big this dude is. This the king. Look the Moors. Okay, so how else can we show or prove that? Okay, well, let's look at these, for instance. Well, first, this is a map of all of the places they found bones of giants in the United States. So the same people that's talking about the Book of Enoch, the 12 commandments, the laws, the this, to that, they're not talking to us about the aspect of our history that they have turned into a mythic thing, and they are taking away the power that Allah gave us and the understanding of what it was like to basically force these things into things to the point where they became actual parts of the landmass that we began to build artifices in. Why would we build giant pyramids with blocks that me and you in the size that we're in now could never hold? Does that make sense? It doesn't make sense. But this makes sense. $6 meters tall. So that brick ain't nothing for him. And look who walking next to him. The ones who were given dominion over those types. I got another one, huh? So they was just making this up. They just drawing these things just, oh, we like to make things look like what they not. No, that's what the so-called Greeks did. That's what they did during Reconstruction when they created all of this myth. These myths. The whole thing was about doing to what we did to the giants, they did to us. They got us to reduce ourselves and become small in the mind, in the spirit, in land. And it started with the consecration, the taking of the land from the people, because that was our connection. That was the land of milk and honey. They call it that for a reason. When you read the Bible, like again, and I'm not saying be a Christian. That's not what we're saying. We Moors, we're the purest Christians because we understand Allah. And we understand Isa. And we bear witness to him in his original capacity. Alaska is an Arabic word. These people want you to be from Africa, but think about this. Every country in Africa is named with an English word. To the point when you go to the country, the language, for the most part, when the country's name is written on everything, is written in English. Nigeria was named by a lady named Lady Flores. She named it that when she left. Think about that. So if all of the names for the African countries are English, then how are you ain't you speaking English now? Why you got to go over there to do that? Mm-hmm. So again, I'm showing you direct evidence. Matter of fact, let me get the actual words from the dude. Anybody got any questions while I'm finding this? So there's Nazarenes, which are the original Christians, who technically are also Coptics. They are Byzantine, Abyssinia, parts of Nubia, all of that, right? That is a part of that sphere of influence. All of those Moors are considered Caucasian or Aryan, if you didn't know. So when they talk about Aryans, they talk about them because they have the Hindu strain. They got the Kushite strain. Look, this in America. So the thing is, we are everything that we consider that are minerals and all of that oil, all that stuff, that mantle, that rock, that matter, that stuff is the leftover energy and fatty and skin deposits of these megalithic beings that we, the Moors of North Central South America and the world, subdued. Here go another one. And you can tell by the skulls that the ones that we was dealing with, they was all black, which fits up with what you read in the book of Enoch, which fits up with what you read in the book of Giants, what you read in all these other things, the book of Deuteronomy, because all of those books were basically about how we structured the new world and rise and fell. When you read the Bible and it talks about the building of the Temple of Solomon, it says that Solomon got the descendants of the giants to help him build it. And what they did was they quarried it at they hewn and made the stones and everything at the site. So that way, when they brought it to the actual site where they would erect the edifice, no sound of a hammer or a mortar or anything would be heard. So it was totally silent when they set this whole thing up. And that was part of the spirituality that was ordained by Allah for them to do that. And that's what he decreed them to do. And so they did that. So when we look at these cities with these giant walls and stuff like that, and these huge things that we just automatically have written off to the words like colonial architecture or Gothic architecture or Romanesque or Greek architecture. None of that exists. All of that is either barbarian or Tartarian, which is basically ancient Asiatic, because we were the inheritors of the ancient Atlantean so-called empires that basically rose up and took control of the world, which is why people ain't going to never let go of the Bible, because that was the express trust given to the Moors and the descendants of the so-called tribes that turned the world into what it is. But that whole aspect of history was broken up into fantasy, into different religions and all of that to basically move away from what's really going on. This is an ancient map of America. And as you see here, all of this, none of this is written. They said that nobody went in this area because this is where all the giants was. So we was all up in here. Back then, California was an island. Another thing, I challenge anybody to find a map that has the Great Wall in China in it before the 1600s. You're not going to find one because it wasn't there before the 1600s, but they told us it was there from 300 something BC, right? But remember, BC was invented in 1582, right? See what I'm saying? None of this stuff is real. What this also means is that we are in the past, the ancient past, my ancestors and all that stuff now. So when we put that fez and that turban on or whatever, the vibe axis around us begins to change, and we go back to looking like or appearing like the people who set all of this in motion. Us, the Moors, the ancient Phoenicians, the ones that these fake Illuminati people is acting like to hold on to power. Look, there was no such person as Khufu. So when these people are talking about Khufu and Khafre and Menkaure, that's fake. That dude's name was King Shaddad ad Ahmad. Shaddad Shaddad ad Am, a Muslim. And he ordered the king of the Adites, who were the giants, to build the pyramid. And he told them to go to the land of Taurian. Taurian is also Tyre, where Solomon and them was allegedly from, the giants that built that. But Taurian also is where we today call Asia, or what they eventually be called Scythia, Sarmatia. Then it became Scythia. Then it became Tartary. And of the Tartars, you had the Huns and the Mons. You see what I'm saying? Both of the Asiatic races, both descendant of giants, because these are the giants that stayed after they brought the stones back. Some of them stayed there and lived with the so-called Thracians. So they talked to us about Greeks. They talked to us about Hebrews. But who taught the Egyptians and the Hebrews the language? Because the Hebrews taught the so-called Greeks, but we know they're not Greeks. We know they're Minoans or Macedonians or whatever their national name was. So King Adad and his sons were buried inside the pyramids, and he was a giant. This is what it say on the wall. Let me get the other picture. Hold on. Here we go. King Shaddad, who they call Khufu, is a Muslim. Mention the pyramid. Madid Shaddad Mohammed Aram Zat Ahmed. Don't that sound Arabic to you? Don't that sound Moorish to you, right? That don't sound Egyptian, do it? This how it's translated. Madid, support, help, extend, complement. Shaddad, Khufu. Mohammed, pewter, extended, longer. Aram, pyramid, sun. Zat, Za'at, adjective for tool. Ahmed, build. So that's written. So like when they write on the side of a building founded by such and such person, that's what he wrote on the side. The same way Hannibal or whoever Hannibal Bay wrote, this was this was the Moors on the Bornstone. So ancient Thracia or Thrace was also called Tars. Tars is where we get Tars or Tartar from. So these were ancient so-called Egyptians who had a parallel culture, who were also somewhat giants or whatever, and had their own script of doing things and a way of building things. And when they relocated to this area that we today call now Asia or whatever, Turin, they eventually turned that into that, because the descendants of Turin were also in what we used to call Shinar. Shinar is what they now today call Sumer, that area, that whole Mesopotamian world. This was the symbol of Thrace. Now, what does this look like? A M, right? But what else does it look like? Keep looking. at these. Look at the columns that you see in front of every building on Earth. Name one building you've gone into that's built like this, that don't have this type of column structure, colonnade structure in the front. Every court building, every downtown state building. If you look at London City, if you look at Washington, if you look at Tryon Square, Philadelphia, Boston, Virginia, Rome, China, Africa, Haiti. So you saying all of those people are Romans? That's what you're saying? You saying all of these people built this structure, the same level, the same way, but these ones spoke Moravic, these ones spoke Latin, these ones spoke Chinese, these ones spoke this, but everybody that had cultures like this wore fezzes and turbans and feathers and had high culture and had ancient technology. Look, this is what it looked like from 1900 to 1920. This how it looked now in 2009. This how it looked now in 2015. So what happened between 2019 and 2015? 2009 and 2015. Yeah, but World War I. But look, this happened between 1920 and 2009. So nobody bombed this place during World War I and II. We was alive between 2009 and 2015, weren't we? Aren't we? So do you remember bombs being dropped or any type of big major situation that they talked about with the destruction of the colonnade in Greece? They know that we hip to it and they know that it's about to be over for them. So they bugging. They trying to figure out how to hide all this stuff before it's too late. Because the Moors is on the scene. We don't already traced it. Look, this is what the Thracians look like. Let me get, where's this picture? Damn, I just had it. Damn, I hate when that happens. It's crazy. Look, this is how deep it is. Something going on. This is a letter from the King of Morocco to George III. George III was from the House of Hanover. The House of Hanover was part of the House of Guelph. The House of Guelph was a part and was basically under the name Tudor. The Tudors were at war with the other ones. That's what Shakespeare wrote about in Romeo and Juliet. And in that movie and in that story, there was a Venetian trying to flip this stuff so that the houses of Montague and Capulet would kill each other. So that way Venice could rule and take the money. So look, this is a letter that he wrote because the Venetians tried to poison him. They tried to kill him for his relationship with Morocco. So look, in the name of God, the all-merciful and commiserating God. Oh, wait. In the name of God, the all-merciful and commiserating God, of whom our account we acknowledge his support, for there is neither beginning nor power that we which proceeds from God, the high eternal God, from the servant of God, the commander and faithful in Mohammed, upheld, supported by the grace of God. Suleiman, for the son of Mohammed, the son of Abdullah, the son of Ishmael, prince of the house and dynasty of Hassan. Remember, Hassan was one of the people that signed the treaty of peace and friendship, who was ever upheld by the power of God, Sultan of Fez and Morocco. See, Morocco spelled with an A, Marocco, and Stus, the Draha, and the Tafilet, and the Triat, together with all the territories of the West. Islam? He's talking to the King of England. and telling him that he's the ruler over everything in the West. Islam, right? This is in the 1700s. To our dearly beloved, cherished, exalted power of God, Sultan George the Third. That's who this is right here on your screen. George the Third. Excuse me. Power of God, the Sultan George the Third, Sultan of the territories of the United Kingdom of Great Britain, Ireland, Duke of Mecklenburg, Stirlitz, Prince descended from the dynasty of the Sultans of Rome and Palestine. Islam? So what? So that don't mean nothing? He just calling him some name? Ain't he a Christian? He's a Christian, right? So why is a Christian depicted wearing a turban and a fez and a feather and a Moorish robe, and he happens to be the king of England and all that? And his brother, the king of Morocco, the Moorish ruler of Morocco, the one who took the head, whose father took the head of the great Satan in Black Byzantine. Okay, this promise we informed you, the Sultan of Rome and Palestine. This is why Britain funded the Israelis to establish a state in Palestine, because they are trying to claim descent from the house of Yaqub through James, because they married into the family when they broke up the family after they poisoned George. Excuse me, they tried to break up the family by poisoning George, but Charlotte's relationship to the Moors in America shut all that down. And so those European Moors from the house of Yaqub, the 12 tribes over there, was trying to come back over here and link up with their peoples. That's why the first people they hooked up with was who? The Delaware Moors. William Penn, read his story. He said when he came here, he found Moors who were astute in speaking the king's English, because they was part of his family. You think it's a coincidence that they was fighting against George with a nigga named George? Come on, man. They think we stupid. These Black African people think we stupid. You know who burned down the White House in 1812? The Royal Ethiopian Regiment. With the help of them. You know who came over here with the conquistadors and them? The Bantu-speaking Africans who had hooked up with the dirty Moorish Portuguese. And they decided to come over here as the conquistadors because they spoke Bantu. Bantu is not a specific people. It was like Latin. It was a bastardized Latin that everybody was speaking over there to get money and converse. There's over 40 million people that speak Bantu, and they're all over the world. The word Bantu means person. Created by Fulani people who wrote and spoke Meroitic. You know what Meroitic is? Meroitic is the original language of it's the original Scalic language of the so-called ancient Nubian Asiatics of this time that I'm talking to you about, when our ancestors was taking dominion over the world and using our ancient magical technology to shut these people down. And the ones that wouldn't submit and the ones that wouldn't show us how to run stuff or do stuff or whatever, we turn them to stone. Think I'm playing? Look at your man right here. You see this? So the water naturally made it look like this, right? That's what you're saying? That's what you're saying? So you're going to talk to me about the Egyptian gods and all this other stuff, but you ain't, and you're going to say, oh, you're going to talk to me about the Nephilim and the this and the that, but you're not going to show me the actual pictures and the fact that most of them was Asiatic. Look, what's that? Ain't that a fez? Ain't that a turban with a fez? Look at the hair. Look at the jaw. Look at the mouth. Look at the wide nose. Look at the eyes. Then boom, look at this. Look at the other ones that was under him when the waters and everything hit him. Look, there's one face. Look. Eyes, nose, mouth. Here's another face, eyes, nose, mouth. Look like he got some sort of hood on, like a Batman mask or something. Then look this dude. One face, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And they was wearing feathers too. Look, 7. There's one stuck up in between them. It's like they all got fused together when whatever happened. So they want you to believe that water made it look like this. This is a natural rock formation. Word. Look, he even got one behind his back. It's like when it happened, it's like whatever happened, they all grouped up together, like huddled together. And then that was it. Look at what she pointing to on the map, Moors. Look. America and South America. The king and the queen in red, white, and blue. The Asiatics, not the Africans. And again, I'm not trying to hate on Africans, and we shouldn't hate on them. What I'm saying, though, is that we're supposed to be under our own vine and fig tree. And for some reason, everybody got problems with Moors. The same thing with white people. Like, what did we ever really do to them other than really free them? So on one side of the world, we got Barbary. On the other side of the world, we got Tartary. Because the connection between the Asiatics over there, the Barbarians, us, and then the Genghis Khan type, Mongol type, Hun type, or whatever, was Thracia, and the Aztec Kingdom. That are both verified archaeologically. So you see, this is the Hagia Sophia. This is the picture I took of the Hagia Sophia over here in America in the Grand Canyon, Arizona. I'm bugging. Look, they just blew the dome off. The dome ain't on there. So we making all of this up. I'm just seeing things. So this naturally formed like this with water and dirt. You can walk up in this terrace and there's entrance points where you could go in this thing, but they got them blocked up and they got cameras hooked up in there to keep you from going in there. I know because I videotaped it. These were the mosques and the temples and everything that they was hiding and getting rid of. And then renaming stuff and modeling stuff over there after the stuff over here. This was the old capital of San Francisco. You see the copper wiring on the inside of the thing because at the top of the domes were these types of antennas that would suck in the ether technology. I'm starting to think Nikola Tesla didn't even exist. That's just another person that they made up and attributed the technology that they had started with. That's the other thing. The Brooklyn Bridge, the Eiffel Tower, them things been there longer than anybody. There is an actual phenomenon, and when people go to France to study history, some of them actually have mental breakdowns and go insane. Because France itself doesn't make sense as a country, as an entity, anything, because it's under a spell. It's under a huge Vivaxis point. And it was taken over by the Venetians, who are posing as British people. Same. So when we talk about the Illuminati and all that, matter of fact, let me tell you exactly who this is. You can research these people and you'll see what I'm saying. From Ignatius Loyola, he had a person with him named Contalini. Contalini was the one who basically canonized the idea that there is no spirit outside the body. So when the spirit only exists on earth, therefore there is no actual need to be redeemed, because the redemption comes because you cannot be redeemed, because the redemption of the soul is based upon the releasing of the soul. But once the soul is released, it don't exist. So we need to control and Europize or whatever the world now. And so Contalini at the time, there was a big guy named Kepler. Kepler was a real big scientist and all of that. But his theory was based upon the so-called flat Earth model, okay? The original model by which everything is deduced by planes instead of spheres, okay? So they got to get rid of that because they want to create the aspect of technological advance without creativity. So imagine being able to create something with no joy of the creation after you've done it. You just now go and use it exactly what it's for. Cold, sterile, pedantic. This is what they want. Just type in books on ether technology. Orgone technology, ether technology. This is all what they're now calling Tartarian technology. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Diodes and all this stuff. We've been on this. Delbert Blair been put us on to all of this. You know what I'm saying? Bobby, we've been knew all of this. Now what's happening is gelling because the more these people say that you're not African, the more energy is coming out showing you that you're African, the more stuff is coming out saying that you're not. So back to Contalini. So what they needed to do was get rid of and stop everybody from reading Kepler. They need everybody to get off that flat model and get into the new dumbed down version of science. Because this is now coming out of the so-called Dark Ages. The Moors is about 150 years deposed from Spain. There's great wars going on. The 30-year war done started. The 100-year war done started. And that's what creates the dissolution, the first major world war. And then they start extending that war to the so-called conquest here in America. So what I'm saying is that the Crusades, the 30 Years War, the 100 Years War, the conquest and all of that stuff was about subduing all of the Asiatic kingdoms in the world. And the people behind that were somewhat Asiatic themselves, now creating a golem due to the fact that they're now going to use the created people that they've manifested through all of these wars to now displace everybody that was in Europe. So the great purge of the 100 Years War is why you don't see no black people in Europe no more to that degree, and why they basically just walked in to the buildings and then say, okay, this is going to be the post office. This is going to be to this. They didn't build anything. What I'm saying to you, brothers and sisters, is that they know old buildings. The same reason why they can't go back to the moon is the same reason why they can't build buildings like this no more. They can't build buildings like this no more because they never built them. Our people built them. And if we didn't build them, we made the giants do it. Because once they married into our family, we when you read the Bible, it says that basically we shut them down to about 95%. They say Joshua himself took at least 15 cities. So we're thinking cities from the perspective of what a city looked like to us today. But what we're not understanding is that the oldest buildings in the cities is on top of the buildings that was already in the cities. And that they hid whole cities and whole areas under swamps. This is documented. And all of it has the same architecture. How else could you have something called the Temple of Sun, the Temple of Isis in the Grand Canyon in America, and in the Temple of Zoroaster, they find statues, huge giant statues of the Buddha. This statue right here is from China. This statue right here is in Shenzhen, China. What we used to call, again, Shinar. Look, so the water made this. Do you see this? Let's see. Try to zoom in. Look. So the water built this, right? The water did that. Yes, it did. But it swam over and destroyed. Look at the striations on the rock face. What this says is that whatever hit this thing, the water came down at an angle, at a 90-degree angle, and literally wiped all of this out. You see the domes? Look at the domes. That's a mosque, more. This is a minaret, more. They just knocked the dome off. Look. Look. White people from Europe built this? You can't see them really, but when you look at this up close, all of these is Moors. All of these is black people. So this is Roman architecture. That's what you're saying? So the Romans was getting copper from Detroit because all the copper from the Bronze Age, they say 75 to 85% of the copper from the Bronze Age came from Detroit. Look it up. Came from Detroit. Yo, Moore, they got us bugging. We really be talking about the wrong stuff. Look how they blew the building up. Look the inside. Look at all the copper. Look. What's that? What's this? What's that? What's that? Exactly. But this is in the 1800s. Early 1800s. Your man Con Edison didn't invent that until the late 1800s when he was going against Tesla allegedly. Look up Eiffel Towers. Look up Eiffel Towers around the globe when you get a chance. And you tell me what's going on. That Brooklyn Bridge is about 300 years older than you think. Any old building that you see like this is actually older. It's about maybe 300, 500 years older than you even think. Look, this is a painting that Thomas Cole did in 1820. This is from the Chicago Fair in 1950. Now you tell me what's going on, Moors. What's up? What's up, B? What's up? What's going on? Look, I could line it up. I could line the picture up where it looked like it just go right into this. He painted this in 1820. So you mean to tell me up until 1950, this was in Chicago? How was the painting? How was the painting that was done in the past older than something that allegedly don't exist in the future? Can you tell me? So this is fake news, this fake? They want you to believe that. Look up the World's Fair. When you on your own leisure, just look it up, World's Fairs. And you're going to see all the same type of technology, the same type of buildings, the same type of thing, right? And they want you to believe, this is what they're telling you. They said that they built this just for the month. They built this just for the fair. And then after the fair, they left some of them up, but the rest of them they just took down. That's what they telling you, Moors. What's that, Moor? Who that? You see his beard? Look. This is in the middle. They built the city around this little castle city right here. Downtown Germany somewhere, Hamburg or something. Peep this. Look at all of that under there, Moore. Look, the same type of buildings, the same domes, the same antennas, all of that. But what they did, they just moved in. They put crosses on the top of stuff, all of that. I'm starting to think we had railroad. Look up plans for the Underground Railroad. There was actually an underground railroad in America that was moving the slaves through the tunnels. And I don't mean people walking. I mean a real rail system that they got plans for right now. What did they call Harriet Tubman? What was her nickname? Anybody know? Her real name was Ross Araminta, but her nickname was the conductor. What you call the person that run the train? Okay. So people built this. So regular people built this. Do you see how big this foot is more? This is in Germany. Look at the spires. Look at look at thing. But the thing is, where the people at? This is after the New Madrid earthquake. Read about that. Then you read about how they sent people into the towns and how the nationals in the towns had to start to make way for the citizens that was coming in. When did slavery start? Look at this, more. That huge thing is built on top of this little fulcrum, which then goes down into the ground even further. This was a drawing of what the artist saw. They want you to believe that he just made this up. And they want you to believe that the dude who drew this and made this up was a white boy. That was just learning to bathe in the late 1800s when Sheikh Sake Dean Mohammed brought soap up there for them and brought the bathhouse, him and his father. Look him up. He's in the book Sex and Race. This allegedly was an image of Carthage. So the crowns, the red, white, and blue, that's the red, white, and blue crown. The so-called triple crown, the triple crown derby, when the horse wins the triple crown. They're talking about the fezzes. Same thing. This is Mexico in the 1930s. This is how they cleaned it up. Sorry. Okay, it's bugging now. I'm going to go back down, okay? Great. Okay, so how do I make it smaller? Yeah. So you see what I'm saying, right? Then boom. You've seen a lot of images of them holding these things, right? This is what they base purses on. When women would walk with their pocketbooks, men and women walk with these little bags because in these little bags was these batteries that was connected to the actual force, the little dome joints that was handed over or was held onto by the king, which they called the grail. That's them orbs and those little batteries we showed them holding. Those things were tied in to the receivers, which were either the pyramids or the mounds or the antennas or whatever orgone technology they was using. Look, this dude the same size as the arch. You know how big arches are. He the same size. Look, he taller than the arch. They showing you who built the pyramids. Moors. And they all got feathers and turbans on. What they call barbarians. So they want us to think barbarians are somebody that's evil. They said in old Rome, there was a phrase they would say that the barbarians is at the gates because barbarian is where you get Berber from, or barber, or Barbary, or Baylor Bay, or Baylor Bay. This is from the Battle of Mount Mora. This is the United States trying to bust up. Look, same buildings, Moors. The city go all the way back. And then behind it, Mount Mora, is this. What's that? Aqueducts. This was how they powered everything. Now, this is them in the late 1900s blowing it up, firing, burning it. These are the Tartarians. Who were related to the ancient Asiatic so-called Egyptians from Misraim, who traveled across the rivers all the way over there and set up what we call Egypt over there under King Shaddad, who was called Ymir, but history calls him Narmer. And he commanded the Adite king, who was a giant, to go into the lands of Taurian. Taurian was Upper Shinar, which was Asia Major. And at this time that it was all Asia, the Asiatics reunited, and then they came back down. Some of them stayed there, and they eventually grew into a people that eventually birthed people like Gengis Khan and Timur and Attila and the rest of them. And they were the ones that went back down and shut Rome down. While they were shutting Rome down in the east, we were shutting Rome down from the north and the west. So you had the Sultanate on one side, or the Caliphate on one side, and you had the Khanate on the other side. But because we was all Asiatics and we was all descended and we all allegedly was of those tribes, so-called clans, we maintained a certain degree of high culture and architecture and technology that allowed us to live in harmony with the earth. And those of us that had those people in our families that descended from those who were giants, then as time went on, birthed people today that we look like as giants. Shaq and the rest of these type people. This is how deep it is, Moors. This Ramses, according to the DNA thing chart that I got, they say I'm a direct descendant of him. But if I'm born in Kings County in the same area that everybody else that look like me from, then that means y'all descended from him too. So I done showed you the Egyptian joint. Here go another aqueduct, giant aqueduct that we use to channel the flow of energy in the waters. This is from the actual writing on the wall for Moor in Kemet. Excuse me, what's so-called Egypt. Sorry. So the symbol for Moor, which means the guardian of, or love, or the high priest of Anu, like the Anju from the house of Jacob, which created the United Kingdom, the United Kingdoms of Jacob, which are the 12 tribes. He was trying to consolidate the power base from us over here to them over there. So when they came back over here, they would be in part of the royal dynasties. That's why Charles in the 15th century married into the Inca line, right? Which then gave him sway to have the jurisdiction over the land that we call North and South Carolina, named after him. So this was the symbol, royal crest for Tartaria. The same owl that you see on the back of Drake's, or on Drake's, or whoever, or even Bohemian Grove. This is a symbol of your people. That has nothing to do with Moloch. They say Moloch was the demon that they served the children to in ancient Phoenicia or Carthage or whatever. in Moab. And that may be true, but that's no different than us living today and you having a friend that's in Freemasonry and they doing sacrifices. What's the difference? Especially if there's no distance in time from when they was doing that then to when they doing that now. You see how they got us in the mind messed up? They got us acting like all that stuff that was happening is not real when they still doing it because we're still in the time that people is doing it. It ain't changed because we're in our time, but we think it's theirs. So we look at this owl that belonged to Bohemian Grove and this and that, but that's a symbol of your Eastern Empire. That's why they say you the Asiatic black man, not the Asiatic African. Here you go. Y'all ready? Look at that. They want you to believe that regular people just, that like me and you could just go and just hew these stones and move them with our minds or some steeds. Like they crazy. The reason why we fell as a people also was because we got too caught up in trying to make everything really what I think it is. We just got too tired of war, man. We got too tired of shutting these dudes down. You know what it's like to take over a giant city? They said that the walls of Canaan was taller than this. Almost 4,000 meters. That means when you walk up to it, when you look up, all you see is the wall. So that's before you even see the city. That's before you see the city. And Allah told our ancestors, okay, knock this wall down and go in there and shut these dudes down because they doing too much physical experiments and all of that. Because see, what this science does now is shut down the dinosaurs. All that stuff is shut down now. Dinosaurs was really there to discourage people from time travel. That's what I think. And time travel is understanding that time is cyclical. It's a plane. It's not an existence. It's a state of being. Right now, in some parts of the world, it's daytime. See what I'm saying? But are they ahead of us or are we ahead of them? You can't tell. That's how you know you're not on a sphere. You see what I'm saying? When you throw the ball up in the air and it come down and it bounce and it bounce, it shows a motion. But when it bounces, when you throw it up, it may be spinning. But when it comes down and hits the thing and does that first bounce, it gets straight. And then it bounces and bounces and bounces. Therefore, time exists only when the kinetic energy is given to it. So that spin on the football is what allows it to be going into the person's hand. You have more of a chance in grabbing the football with a spiral throw than just a straight throw. Am I lying for people who play football? You want to get what? The perfect spiral, which is what? The golden ratio, right? But no, the Da Vinci Code, that said that that's the Fibonacci sequence. You see how they got you? So before I read about who built the pyramid, let me get into Phoenicia. Meaning the purple country, the land of the palm trees, the Thessalocratic ancient Semitic civilization. Semitic meaning Moorish, meaning Hebrew. And you see on the flag that I showed you from Tartary, it says Hebrew on it, right? Look. The same Hebrew that you read, or Hyber that you read on the Latin that I showed you over King James. Right? So what? That's different. So they'll talk to you about Marco Polo and his travels into Asia, but they won't talk to you about that thing launched the invasion in the 13th century. which so happened to coincide with the time that the Mali and Mandi people came over here on the behest of Abu Bakr in the beginning of the 13th century. So that's a coincidence. There was no relationship into that. But when we read the text of Coronado, when he talks about Malinche, who was the little slave girl that got cast out because she was allegedly thotting up with the trying to seduce the priests and stuff, so they kicked her out. And then he used her as the secret translator to find out what was going on so he could shut everything down. Malinche is Mandi for slave. And that's in Mexico, in what's called the Aztec Kingdom. So this is on the side of the obelisk. I, Yamir, Bey, Shaddad, have founded this city when old age did not yet, nor death not disturb, nor gray hairs trouble me. When the stones were here in abundance and men did not acknowledge the makers. I have built life portions and dug the canals. I have built the life in portions and dug its canals and planted the trees and detracted to embellish it with monuments, with wonderful monuments and amazing structures. I have the seal, my what is that shit? My can't really read what that says, but let me finish. I have built the canals, boom, boom, boom. I've dug life in the canals and planted the life trees, wonderful monuments, and the structures. I have something, boom. But then it says this is what it say on the side of the obelisk. El Tab Ta Marat. El Tabarat. Excuse me. El Thabat Ben Marat. The Adite and the Magat ibn El Amir ben Abdi. He, the Thamadite, the Caliph to the mountain Tories. The mountain they cut of the tree, the Thadite, the Caliph, he to the Mount Taurian. See, Taurian Asia, Shinar, Far Asia, Tartary, Thrace. The Red Mountain, and they eat of it. The Red Mountain, and they eat of it, and the rocks, and carry them both on their shoulders. Then one of the Reba of El Thabat, having bare the errand, I caused the people of the great kingdom the reputation. Those who had seen the obelisk were made by El Yamir. Servant, thank you, Moore. He made him the servant. See, he made the giant who went to Tartary and took the stones. All his people brought the stones back and built them. And his name was El Yamir Shaddad al Amran. Shaddad Amran, who they call in Egyptian mythology Khafre and Menkaura, who was allegedly his son, which means his son was a Moor. You see, they refer to themselves as Els and Beys, just like Akhenaten was the El Armana dynasty of Els and Beys, giant ancient Canaanites who built all of this stuff and this stuff. This stuff existed at the same time. They just moved into places that we already was. This is a tree stump and this is your fingerprint. This is an ancient Tartarian. Asiatic. What's the difference between these two people? Nothing. Are they from Africa? No. She pointed to America. Look, this Nimrod holding a lion in the hand in the vice grip like it's a house cat. So we making this up? We making it up. No, what I'm saying is we in the post so-called flood world, which was the ancient world, we were given dominion over everything again. And we set up an international worldwide maritime empire of kingdoms and created a separation, as it says in the Quran, between the lands of the father Ham and the son. And of that, you had certain tribes who were left over from this flood and had survived and still had cities and stuff they could rock in. And so in order for us to have dominion, Allah decreed that we go out and do what we needed to do. And those people who did that were a conglomeration of peoples from the ancient kingdoms like Egypt, like Thrace, like Samaria, like this, like that were Moors, in the sense that they were all priests of Anu, and they felt that they were the guardians of the ancient covenant, which is why they created the infinity gauntlet, which we call the Levite vest, that only the Levites could touch the ark, because the ark had hyper technology on it that they used to bring the walls down. Read the Bible, read it. They describe the technology specifically. It's some sort of harmonic resonance technology, and they showed you that in Raiders of the Lost Ark. Don't this look like every building downtown when you go to court and all of that? So look, this is broke off. It was steps up where you go up to something. You don't know how big this thing was. But look at the shape. You see how it's shaped like Darth Vader's helmet or Shogun's helmet? They probably built it on the back of a giant head or something. They showed you that in Avengers when they went to the planet that was the Celestial's head, and they was mining it for all of the resources. Look. And this is who they want to exterminate. All of us, because we have the gene that binds them, that binds everybody. So they had to make it quiet in us. These things was here or built during the time of what we would consider the first century. They got us thinking that this stuff was built by them in the 1800s. They could not have built it. Look, there's windows of this thing that goes into the ground. You see that? But we walk by these buildings. We done went to school in some of these buildings. This looked just like the school I dropped out of. They called the Street Academy by the time I left. Look at the technology, man. When you seen windmills that look like that? Look, this is in Chicago. No, this is in Louisiana. This was Louisiana. This is where you used to live. You used to live in all of this. This was your house. And you know it is because ain't nobody there. Look, where the people at? There's no people. Well, this one has because of World's Fair. But where they at here? Where they at here? Look, they just waiting for somebody to go into them. The same way they build gated communities right now. They got whole cities that's already built in China that's just empty, sitting there. What they using them cities for? Who gonna live there? When all the Chinese moving to Africa. Who that for? Whenever you see windmills that look like this, the prophet said, don't get rid of your Bibles. One of the people who was integral in establishing the Moorish Science Temple at the time where it was called, where they had a faction called the Moorish Jews, the Moorish Zionist Temple of Moorish Jews. Rabbi Wentworth and a brother named Ford Eel, who's the one, not W.D. Ford. This is the real Ford Eel that you see behind him. They call him Rabbi Ben Ford. And he was the one who used to build with the prophet on the Moorish thing, because there was mad Moorish groups that was claiming from the line of Canaan and Moab and all that, and it was all good. And they worked with everybody else, with the Ethiopians, and everybody was no problem. This was when they had something called the Royal Ethiopian Order. But it wasn't masonry. It was the real Torah. They was holding real Torahs, real ancient scrolls, all that right there in Harlem, right there in Detroit, right everywhere in these giant buildings that I'm showing you, like their ancestors always did. And these people came in after the first upheaval during what we would call the so-called American Revolution that I told you started around 1511 with the Moors who revolted against the slavery holding Moors in Louisiana, and it spread all the way up. So all of the so-called wars that they've been fighting since has been wars to control the territory, control the technology that is only us in power. They have, when you get a chance, type in ornate fireplaces. And you're going to see old fireplaces with beautiful architecture and gilded imagery in it, but there's no place to put no wood. This was in Louisiana, man. This was the capital that we had in Louisiana. Look, same domes, everything. Look, just like in Kemet, just like in Thrace. Remember I showed you the symbol of Thrace, which was in conjunction with ancient Kemet because the Thracians were related to the Adites, and they went into ancient Shinar, which again is ancient Asia, when the whole planet was Asia, like we've been saying. So it's not that giants were the Greek gods. It's the fact that we were given the power and dominion over the earth, and we don't really understand what that means because they got us caught up in the religion. The Bible, the Circle 7, the Digma Potto, all of that. We are adherents to the ancient world, which means that we are not in this world. We are not in their time stream. We are talking ancient technology stuff that, based on our title, shows that we now have dominion over the giants. Aren't they the giants of the day? Aren't they working with these entities to do whatever they're doing to keep this stuff concealed? The only people who can stop them is real Moors, because we're the only ones that know. But we are called barbarians, right? Or thugs, right? Which were two derogative names developed in Rome to signify those who were loyal to the ancient empires, to the ancient landowners who were the inheritors of the world after the flood, who established an ancient maritime empire because, as descendants of Noah, they had dominion over the seas because they were given that by Allah. But in order to understand that, you have to understand what Allah is. It is the maker, the owner, the ruler of the planet Earth, father civilization, God of the universe. The original Asiatic black man, Moab, who descend from Ruth. But they got us looking at that from a religious point of view and not understanding it from an actual point of view in terms of potential. This was Chicago, man. So what happened after? Where'd the water go? Look, what happened? They was just balling. Look, all of this. They want us to believe that giant white people built all this. This happened in our parents in them lifetime. Look what happened. Look the stuffed mammoth. Look the stuffed giant octopus. When did that happen? Where? Oh, they just created that. That's they stuff. They made that. Word. But I got a book called The Conquest of Peru and Mexico by the Mongols in the 13th century, and it talks about how they brought them over here, giant woolly mammoths and elephants and giant creatures and stuff, because a lot of them was giants. But what I'm saying also is that the Moorish, what we understand as the Moorish or the so-called Tartarian, the Barbary and the Tartarian empires were also deeply connected as descendants of these ancient so-called tribes and clans that, for better or worse, fought and worked together up until the present day. And out of all of them, the people that was instrumental in making that happen was Ignatius Loyola, his bodyguard, who was Contalini, who was also a cardinal and Jesuit general, and the founder and the supporter of Isaac Newton. Isaac Newton was the stooge that they used to flip on the people, because they agreed to follow what was called the Sarpe method. Sarpe was a student of Contalini, and Sarpe method was to use religious wars to capture land. And he was the one that those type of people were people like John Donne, Francis Bacon, Milton. These people, all of them niggas was under Newton. Newton was a luminous, a occultist, homosexual who was actually insane. And so they hid his insane writings and alchemy and all of that, and then founded his perspective on the spherical earth and used and created the whole gravity thing to take control of the Moorish academia, basically to use that to take control then of the whole science of the day, to perpetuate the whole flat earth myth and all of that. And until Spain took Granada, and then that's what opened up everything. So what they wanted to do was get a monopoly by the 1500s. So that's when they wanted to come over and conquer it. But the Pope knew if he stepped over here like that, it's one thing to buy the kingdom from El Zagal, but it's another thing to diss the Khan, Gengis, because Gengis is claiming this aspect because he's saying he Asiatic. So they send Marco Polo to go smooth it up with Gengis, and then that's when Gengis hears about the conquering Spain and all of that, and then decides that he's going to wage war against them, but at the same time he's going to go and shut them out of the New World. So he starts the invasion, you see, and gets all of the elephants and the giants or whoever together, get them on the boats, and he sends them from the Pacific down to Peru, Mexico, as it says in this book. But before he left, he conquered so much of ancient Shinar, which became China, that he consolidated the throne in his bloodline and then created the people we today call Asians. The same way the Barbary Moors created the people we today call Italians and Puerto Ricans and all of these people. You see, wherever we was at, we would create a race, because it got to a point we got tired of all of the decades of fighting. We reduced the giant strain, or the devil strain, the grafted strain in the old world, to a point where it was only maybe 95% left, but that 5% was able to find a way into the bloodline and use the corruption to make that happen. That's why they had a giant statue of Apollo in Venice. You understand? That statue of David, that's an altar statue that they used to do for Apollo. That's actually Apollo to them. That they would create a god that they could get our people to bow to. That's Yaqub. That's the children of Yaqub. That's what they did. And they started to civilize these white European wild men, shave them up and whatever, and then use them to destroy or whatever, or marry in, or use the Moorish appetite for white slave girls or white slave boys to marry into these families and eventually create the mulatto race, mestizo race, you see, and then use them to conquer, like with Malinche, you see. So Contalini was under Loyola. That's all Jesuit. So your man, what's his name? Confucius, Jesuit. All these people were Jesuits, which means they were Venetians, you see, which means that they were satanic Phoenicians, dirty Moors who were pagans and had made a deal with the devil. Look, I'll bug you out. I can get this. So every Asian that exists is descended from Genghis Khan. You understand? Everyone. There's not one that's alive today that's not. That's why they feel they can go into Africa and do what they do. Look. Can y'all see? Look. 1. See the face? 1 is his body. 2, see? Is his body. Right? 3, see the nose, and the eyes, the hair? Boom. 3, look at this dude. See the eye, the nose, the arm. His arm is like over, like he was trying to cover his face when it fell on him. One arm over, the other arm down, the rest of the body, right? Then boom, here's another one. Hair, face, nose, some sort of mustache or whatever, jaw, boom. One under him, boom. This is the dude I showed you. Then look at this person's size. Then look at this person sitting down. See the leg and the feet? It's like they sitting down on something, looking at everything. Almost like it's a woman. It kind of looks like a giant woman pregnant. Y'all see? You even make it bigger? It's in Alabama. See? 1. See the elongated head? See that Hinton head? Cheekbone, the lips. There's another head right here. It's like a jaguar head. See this? It's in your backyard, man. Imagine what's under your grandmother's house. See him? Boom. The eye, the nose, the arm over his face, the other arm down, gripping something, leg in the dirt. Look, the little white man. Look, the little white man. Look, they done built a mine into them. This is what they showed you in Avengers. Look at the head. Look at the other head. And the mouth open. White man standing in front. And look at this giant person who's almost like sitting there in shock, looking at the destruction. Look, and what's that? That looked like a giant gorilla, right? You see that? Am I bugging? You see that, right? That looked like a giant gorilla lifting his leg up to like piss or something. Look, or something. That's not a person. Look. Look at this person. Look how tall this person is. And they got some sort of robe on. See that? Sitting. You see it, right? Yeah. Sitting down. Looking at under the tree like, damn. Like it just happened. And look, here go the white people setting up the shop. Ready to bury it again. Real talk. It's like they came in, blew everything up. A lot of people in the Civil War died in their backyard. The Confederacy was ours. We was trying to stop the Venetian oligarchy from shutting everything down, putting us on paper money. And when the Moors fell in Granada and was trying to set up the Jesuit thing, and it got back through Marco Polo that we was losing the empire over here, the so-called Mongols went and tried to shut the dirty Moors down in the east, and then he launched the invasion for us in the west. So you got the Moors coming in from the Bering, you got the Asiatics coming in from the Bering Strait. They go down from the Bering Strait into Alaska, down into so-called Canada. We check them there. Those that's left, find out who's cool. They then stay. They become part of the Inuit people. The other ones go down. They hook up with the Moors that's already there. Say, okay, y'all can stay on the plains because now we got the peace treaty, and that's that. And this is where these Asian people come from. Same thing in South Asia now, in South America. They go down, they get off, bring the elephants, take over the kingdoms, shut everything down as much as they can, and then establish whatever happened. And then those that didn't want to go back to Mongolia or whatever ran up into the caves, into the jungle. This is where we get the wild Amazonian people and these people from. Because wherever we was at, we would build the people to serve us. The white people here in America is the white people from the Appalachian Mountains that they don't talk to us about, that we bred out and we bred into, that we farmed on in Edom, in Virginia, and the tobacco farms and all that, the plantation. Or like down in Plantation, here in Plantation, Florida. And then eventually the Spanish came, and then, like I said, all of that flipped up, and then all the kingdoms then became forfeit. So George tried to do what he could, shut it down how he could, based upon his relationship to Edward. And so these people created these illusions to block us from the actual history of how much dominion we had over things. So when we see these giant factories where they was building cars and all of that, and we see those giant factories where they was like smelting steel and all of that, and it's these huge vats, these giant vats, and these little people in the 1900s and all of that making weapons for the war. We supposed to believe that white people built those? Yeah. That was here before everybody got here. Again, so all of this was hidden through Newton's gravity, BS, and then was parodied because they was all of them was under Aristotle. They used Aristotle as the model, and he was whack. So it was all to keep everybody dark and to keep the dark people and start to move them out and then re-people these people that they could control and then start to lock it down on both sides. And when they couldn't do that at its worst, that's when Granada fell. And then that's when they started being able to get other Moors and dirty Moors and conversos to come in and do what they needed to do, all with the promise that they would finance them against Spain. This cross right here, this washed up out here in Florida on the beach. This is a Inquisition cross that was putting people on this. Boom. They all hooked up and then started to mess with the monarchy out there, and then put Sortzi, this dude named Sortzi, who became the so-called priest, but he was really a warlock to Henry VIII, because Henry just liked smashing chicks, so he wanted to indulge that with him so they could take over the throne in England. So they did that. They was following the Sarpi method, and so this is what initiated everything over there, which then initiated the war everywhere. And so Shakespeare allegedly was against it. And then that's when he started to work against that by putting it all in plays and all of that. And that became the aspect of satire and all of that. That's where it really started. Him really showing and proving who these people really were. Same way that I would make a book about a maniacal president, you know what I mean, who's an egomaniac and he's blonde and, you know, talks funny. You would know that that's basically Trump. This is what he basically did with characters like Iago and Macbeth and all of that. That's why they want you to keep reading it, because you don't get it. That's why they outlawed Shakespeare after he did the Bible and all that, because they was really Muslims on the low. Well, actually, they were Catholics, but they were Cathar Catholics, like Moorish Catholics, what they call Iberian Christians, Moors on the low, because they all descend from those Moors that didn't want to leave. You see what I'm saying? So based on this model, there was no slavery in the United States west of the Mississippi prior to 1854. So when they tell you that they brought all these African slaves over here, that's not true. What the Moors brought over here, though, the Asiatics, the Tartaries, they brought elephants and all of that to hold us down, the same way the Mandi people did. This was in Chicago, man. This right here, this from the World's Fair in Chicago. If I told you that this was Spain right now, you wouldn't say, you know what I'm saying? You wouldn't know. This was under the jurisdiction of the Chalagi people, the Chalagi, the original Cherokee, the Moors up and down the Mississippi, all of them. The ones the prophet told us about. This right here, this in New York, this the subway, the old subway in New York. This go back before the 1600s, this thing right here. So you tell me what's going on, Moor. These Moors is arguing about, like, they don't know what's going on, Moor. They don't know what they own. They don't know how to get it. They don't know where they fit. There's documentation that shows the Moors and the Hebrews down in the same organizations, unified through the UNIA. Look it up. But we were Moors. We didn't call ourselves Ethiopian. That was the difference between us and them, because we descend from those Moors from Canaan, which means we descend really from the giants that lost their territory and asked the original people, the original pharaohs of Egypt over here to come over here and build the glorious cities. This right here, Chicago. Come on, Moor. 1900. So what, they knocked us down and put up Sears Tower? Them pictures that you see, remember they would show you them pictures of the white men on top building the Empire State Building, sitting on the girder, the beam, and they all having lunch, smiling. That's fake. You never see them building it. You always see them rebuilding it. So they want you to believe that white people built this. If they built it like this, how come they're not building stuff like this now? Because they can't. Only you can. Only you can command the giants to do that. So the power that we use to subdue the old world and all that stuff resided down in our pineal. That's why Yaqub wrestled with the angel. And at the end, what he said, give me a new name. And what did he say? The name that I give you is what? Is what? Israel was the name of the nation. The name that he got from the angel was what? Nope. Nope. Go back, read it. Go back and read it. The irony is, I just told you. Nope. 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 Pineal. Read it. He wrestled him to the morning. Meaning he wrestled with the idea of how to get rid of them, how to shut them down. And finally, the angel had to give him a name, and he gave him the secret. Pineal. Calcify the pineal organ, and you can shut them down, and you can turn them to stone. Because they don't have enough carbon to absorb water the way that we do. Look at this. Used to go to work here. Look at them burying everything, digging it up. Look, city's already there, on top of everything. Look how far this go down. All between the late 1900s and 1300s. Look, this is all the stuff you had. Look at this castle. They want you to believe the water made it like this. It did after it buried the whole thing. But there's tunnels and caverns and steps that you can walk all through this. And inshallah, we will again. This is in America. White man ain't built none of this. Look at this. This is how you was living. This is how you was living. Yes, it was pineal. This is the castle of Montezuma in Arizona. I was there. Just like I showed you the other one. So people built that. Like regular people. No, that was part of their penance. And everything was built on these things. These are called star forts. Everything is built on that. The hexagonal pattern of matter. All based on the Platonic solids and how they move with the elements and how they interact with the artifices that we put in the cities to be able to harness the energy to create the renewable energy that you see manifested in the main orb of that place that in the Bible is called the cornerstone. That cornerstone is the highest level of radiation from that area that's then condensed, put in some sort of orb that's then lit up with or soaked in gold or silver, and then is given to whoever's the lord of the kingdom, and he holds that. They showed you that in the Assassin's Creed movie. Go back, look at that. And the Sultan had it, and they couldn't do nothing unless they got it because they wanted to control the free will of man because it's the pineal organ. It's representing the pineal organ of the old world. Every Mason is under this jurisdiction, the Royal Ark. The Royal Ark is called the Canterbury Ark. The Ark is the strongest. This arch is the strongest type of arch in architecture. Anything you build on top of this this will never fall. They're also called cloisters, and they attract orgone energy. That's why when they do the prayers that the monks would do in the abbeys and start to pray out or whatever, it will reverberate and create a certain energy that could hypnotize people and put them into whatever state you needed them to be in, which is what the oligarchs and them wanted to do. This building is older than Russia itself. That building was here before Russia because your ancestors built it and they was giants. There was 3 of them. And then the statues they have of them, they all wearing fezzes. They trying to tell you that you don't know what this stuff did, but they all holding the same objects, the same things. And then everybody that was down with that had a piece of that organite or Moabite stone or whatever it was that they used then to power their house because it was all tied into the same technology. So when we left, they moved into these castles and didn't know how to keep them warm because they think the fireplaces was fireplaces like that. Didn't know how to work the technology, wound up freezing to death. So eventually they had to bust open the beautiful ornate stuff, put a flume in it, break up the copper linings and the gold linings that was on the inside, take that, melt that down for jewelry or whatever, or sell it, and then create a chimney and then burn wood in it. That's how downstairs these people are. That's the technology these old Europeans was having. This is a festival they do every year to honor the two giants that fell at the hand of King Brito, whose name was also Brutus, who may or may not be the same Brutus from Caesar. And he was a Hebrew, but he was a Hebrew from Macedon, meaning that after the fall of Jerusalem, you had Hebrews that went all over the world during the Bronze Age. And a lot of them went to what we call Peloponnesia, what they now call the Mediterranean. And they saw that the people that was there was related to them due to the fact they were seafaring people. So they were from the tribe of Dan, also called the Tuathaldan, right? Who are also called the Fomorians, right? And they hailed from the forever west, which was over here. And eventually they came over there and shared the ancient knowledge with them with the Hebrew. So the Greeks translated the Hebrew and the sciences or whatever and taught them that. The people we call Greeks, which is really Macedonians, Spartans, all of that. So them people was like, well, you can't go to that island because that's run by the giant. His name was Albion. So Brito was like, nah, we're going to do that because Allah gave us mandate over all of them. So he goes to the island with his people, and there the two kings is Gog and Magog. And they wind up beating all the giants down, getting all rid of all of them until they get rid of Gog. And they basically beat Magog down to the point they was going to kill him. But then his man was like, Brito's man was like, I want to fight him fair and square. So let him get better. Let's take over the cities, and then we'll set everything up. And then once he get better, we'll fight him. So then they did that, fought him at the cliffs of Dover, which was the giant cliffs. When you look at the cliffs of Dover, they look like big bones. Look it up online. You see what I'm talking about? That's carved out evenly. And allegedly they threw him over, and somehow or another he turned to the stone, and then the firmament of England was added onto by his body. So every year from then, they celebrate them. Look what color they are, and then look on his shield. That's the same shield that you see from what? The Washita, the so-called Dark Phoenix. Same joint here, see? So all of the things that they tell us is true is really reverse. Everything they say is true is false. Everything that they say is false is true. And our history is not just tied up to that. So what we really are, Moors, is we are a transcontinental people who have our origin as Moorish Americans in this state. But from the Asiatic race, we can trace our situation all the way back to Noah. And if you couldn't do that, and if it wasn't true, then you wouldn't be able to use that as a lineage-based doctrine in legal matters. You understand? You wouldn't be able, because they would have to try to prove that you weren't that. This was the guy Sean Connery played in the movie. El Rasuli El. Like I said, look at this, man. So the Venetian oligarchy, who were the fake whack Venetians who backed New World, Western colonial papal bull versus real Christianity doctrine, and created the Western joint, and then used that as the means to take over and acquire all of the land of the original people. And by using that land, they were able to consolidate their power base over the world, and then used everything they could to hide everything. So what we have to remember is that after a certain time in history, our ancestors grew up over what was Reconstruction. And everything that was reconstruction is what was being pumped in any areas that was under the jurisdiction of the state. So the history that we have is the history that was given to us through things like the Moors Indian school, the Mohawk schools, that were actually where now Queen Elizabeth is being tried. She's actually there's a warrant for her arrest for what she did to the Mohawk children, her ancestor Elizabeth, and this one because she raped and kidnapped a whole bunch of children in the 70s or the 80s, one of them. So she's already, or they're already knee deep in it. You know what I'm saying? And they're into hiding the whole thing. So what I'm saying is that if the Yaqubian people, the black ones, the tribes of Israel, got together, they could shut it all down. So what they have done is split everything up and split everybody up as Moors against Hebrews and this and that. When we're all supposed to be different aspects of the tribes that were there to destroy the great beasts. You understand? And amongst us, a lot of us, when we're born with the conical heads. At one time, there were so many of us born with heads like that, especially over there, that they started to wear headgear to cover it. And thus the fez becomes the basis, or the locks become the way to hide or to protect it, because it was a symbol of that. I remember when my baby was born, his head was like this, and then eventually it went back into shape. Over there, they're all about genetic modification as a tribal lineage thing. So even if they have AIDS, if it's the tribal way that the elder has sex with the girl of 13, then she's gonna have sex with the elder and get AIDS. And there's nothing that we do that. That's why I know I'm not African, because I couldn't be involved with something like that. You know, they eat and they'll eat like hyena feces, and like they'll do things like that. They'll eat the eyeballs of animals, and you know what I'm saying, even humans. So this is not to diss them. It's just to say that customarily they're from their father. They're from that side of the family. But us over here who have the 3 strands and have the EU melanin through the biosynthesis, we're a little different. You dig? The Sean Connery movie was called The Wind and the Lion. So when they talk about the Christian Moors and the Europeans that was coming over here and trying to marry into the families and do their thing to get the land, that's these people, your people. But they were your people from over there who had a certain way of doing business. And before they could deal with the indigenous people here, they had to deal with us as Moors. Under the empire, because as you can see, he was considered George, his ancestor was considered the Sultan of Palestine and Rome, and they were the Holy Roman Empire. So the British Empire that descended from Brito, the conqueror of Albion, who renamed the island Britain in his honor, was then the first line of kings who was descended from Jacob after the flood, who began to set up dominion in that place because he had slain the great beast. It's all in the Bible. So therefore, any territory that was a part of England was a part of that. So that means New York and all of that. That's why they hooked up with the Delaware Moors, because those were the ones that was descending and related to them. Eventually producing somebody we'll call George Washington and Jefferson and them, who was all basically Venetian-based, Venetian-influenced Frenchmen who were basically Spanish, because the language of the Spanish court up until like the 1800s was French. All during the Moorish occupation and Reconquista, the Spanish people spoke French and the French people spoke Spanish. Same way Greenland is green, Iceland is green, and Greenland is full of ice. So the Jew-Els were the house and the count Moors from the counties of Anjou, who were connected to the line of Brito through James, and Scotia. Scotia being the ancient Egyptian goddess who was basically related to the Scottish people and the ancient Scots who married King James' father. This chick right here was a direct descendant of, who was a direct descendant allegedly of Cleopatra, which means, again, we can trace and know exactly what Cleopatra looked like. And it looked like this chick right here, who looked just like Emma Thompson or one of these chicks that's on TV today. So again, when have we really left? This is why you keep seeing images of celebrities from the past and then can compare them to how they look now, because we're in the same time period. They have no control over it anymore. That's why they got to stick to the gematria with the rituals and all of that. Look at what they did to Black History Month this year. Nobody remember anything about Black history. That's why classes and stuff like this is important, because we've been doing this every month. So when they talk to you about people coming from Europe, they talking about the white people who replaced the so-called Black Europeans, who they then banished and all of that through their little hustle, through all of the people who owed the Venetians money, going all the way back to the fall of Granada. And of that, when people like Alessandro Medici wanted to get right and get people back their money and all that, they outed him. Same way they did John F. Kennedy. Same way they did King. See what I'm saying? Because we dealing with the same people, because we in the same time period. We've never left. We never left. We're in the ancient world now. We in the future world now. Because their time system is structured on a lie. It's structured on something that existed after a time that our empire fell. So how could we base what we know we are on their time stream? We can't. So when we go and we claim to be Moors or Moorish Americans, it's more than just doing paperwork. It's more than just doing that. Once we truly establish that name and put it on the record properly, and then start to execute and do certain things properly, now we're in a better position to utilize what we need to do. One of Shakespeare's writers was a lady named Amelia Bassano. Is the lady who wrote all of the Shakespeare plays. Because she was Black, they would not publish her work. She died in poverty because she never received a dime for her work. Shakespeare was illiterate and couldn't barely write his own name. Right? See what I'm saying? So when you look up who Bassano was related to, she related to the royal family of both Portugal and Spain and all of that, because it was the same people. These people were not building them buildings, man. At no time in history, they are still, look up people who walk on four legs today. There's Caucasian people in the Caucasus Mountains walking just like this every day today. When they say white people get circumcision, that's them cutting their tails off still, because we haven't changed. Their genetic has not changed, but ours has. So they have to create these mental projects through Project Janus, Project Phoenix, MK Ultra, all of this crap, hip hop, Takashi, all of this to get rid of us, what we doing right now. Look, we're going to end off with this. Anybody notice this? Anybody notice this? Well, the paper, when I say it's not just the paperwork, I mean it's more about understanding your position in the paperwork. You can't relinquish jurisdiction if they never had jurisdiction. Therefore, when you go to do certain things jurisdictionally, you have to understand what position you're taking. That's why doing the name correction through a court or something like that is proper through a certain proclamation, and then establishing that all the way up where all of your identity is consolidated in that. Then establishing a foreign trust to be able to do business through that allows you greater influence and access to the imperial side of your birthright, which is allodial. which is not only financial, but it's also spiritual, because you are part of the covenant. And once you accept Il or Bey at the end of your name, you're saying that you remember that you were part of this ancient maritime empire that descended from those who were given dominion after the great cataclysms to run everything. That's why every Moorish city and every city that we ruled had a great canal that we used to get all over the world. And wherever we was at after a time when we stopped doing what we were supposed to do, shutting these giants down, niggas started having babies with them again. Niggas started creating harems and again. Niggas started creating other races to do all the work again. And then eventually now we were the giants that now had to be deposed. And ain't that what they did? Isn't that how they took control of your empire? And then they just moved right in and then took control of everything, right? And then flipped the history, hid the books, hid the access, and then created schools to kill us all. Just like they got the death squads in Brazil, they got the slave markets in Libya, they got the slave markets in low key Trafalgar Square. The Muslims go out there and sell their women. Like this was going on, fam. The same way you got the AKAs and the Freemason people over here selling they sisters to Freemasonic favors to get Grammys and all this. So does anybody know who this guy is? It's going to be the last one. Exactly. We are nationals and not citizens. So there's a way to declare your nationality and everything based upon how you set up the proclamation. So people that want to do that, hit me up at houseofl@hotmail.com, because everybody's situation is different. And once the hammer comes down with these consular courts and the rest of these things, it's going to be those of us that actually have our joint properly documented that's not going to have to worry about none of that. I next week I'll show the letter that the sister sent me from the Social Security office, specifically stating that they're not taking none of those consular court documents and none of that. So back to the question, nobody knows who this is? It's okay if you don't. And then afterwards, once it's all done and you got your stuff and everything is cool, then I'll give you an application to Temple, so that way you can become a member to a temple, but you don't have to necessarily rely on that temple to handle your private, public to private affairs. You'll have already been established with your estate and all of that, so you could just really get into the fellowship, getting into doing things or whatever we could do through group economics to set everything up from the private perspective and not worry so much about what they talk about on YouTube and all that. So for those that don't know, this is Queen Victoria's brother. His name was Julian Talano. He was sent to Indonesia, because his father had sex with the Duke, the then King of England. Or somehow or another they did it, but this is her brother. As you can see, he's a Moor, and he went and basically helped found the Maharlika dynasty in what is now Indonesia. And he had a son. So he is the Prince of England. You understand? Successor to the throne of England, Scotland, Ireland, Wales, etc. You understand? His son So when he left their banner, the MacLeod, his name in England was Julian MacLeod. They added Talano when he moved to Indonesia. This was his son, Julian. Julian Talano had a son named Raziel. And Raziel wound up being a great ophthalmologist in all Europa amongst the Moorish courts and houses and all that. And eventually he treated the queen, the mother or the wife of the Duke of Bavaria or whatever. Her name was Schnuckelgruber. And they hooked up and on the low, and she had 2 babies for him. And them babies, like as you see with him, look Indonesian. One looked more Indonesian, the other one looked like kind of like lighter skin. And so the Schnickelruger, the Duke, he wasn't feeling them. So, because he knew what the deal was. So he did whatever he could basically to torment the kid to the point where the mama sent him to go live with the pops. Yes, it's the same dynasty. Yes, it's these people. Yes, that's what I'm saying. Those was Muslims. Yes, that's what I'm saying. Fighting the British, you see? And look at Braveheart. The Braveheart people was giants. The British was smaller than them, remember? Remember? Yes. And the flag for the MacLeod is a red dragon. The flag for Tartary is a yellow field with a black dragon. So when you hear them talk about the Black Dragon Society, they're talking about the old Tartarian society that's really running Russia and England through the line of the guy I just showed you. And I just showed you that he's a Moor. And he was from the ancient line, again, of the giants, which is the line we're from, because they married into our great-great-great-grandmothers. That's why they like you to go through the mitochondria line, you see, because that's the line that has the ancient admixture of the giantism, whether it be giantism in size, giantism in intellect, giantism in athletic ability. Do you understand? This is what Glass was about. The coming out of this true Superman. And so what they've been doing since we've been asleep is trying to create a new one. They can't do it. And while they've been doing it, they've gone extinct. So now they got to create a version of them in us through the amalgamation by pushing the white black woman with the white man. That's why that's all you see on TV. Any movie where some sort of emotional thing where they got to work together to move up and do this and that, they're gonna go. It's the white black woman with the white man. Look at the Netflix shows. See if I'm lying. The black woman is always in the league in the romantic thing with the thing. But then in society, they painted that the black man is doing it because he is. But the problem is they're both being used to create a space for these people to exist in the next 10 to 20 years. The same way we created them and created the races or whatever was the same way the giants created everybody else. All of the centaurs and the this and the that, all of that was abomination. All of that. So the Chinese want to get the head start in the grafting because they know they next. So they done going into Africa and now they exploiting all of the black women. But guess what? They've been doing that. Because the African men are all Western Freemasons. See what I'm saying? Animanists, Satanists. Which is why they want you to get into that instead of getting into this. So this is why they need you to get caught up in Africa. This is why they need you to hate Moors. This is why they want you to be an Indian, because the term Indian didn't even exist. It didn't exist. There was no Columbus coming to India thinking he was in India, because that place was called Hindustan, and that was a part of the Mauryan dynasty. And if they was going to rock with that, they first had to get permission from the Khan. And that's when the Khan said, no, y'all not going to come over here and just shut it all down. I'm going to come over here. Which is why we are Americans, because we're of the Asiatic race, a distinctive race. that has a glorious past in ruling, conquering, educating, establishing dominion, bringing order, unifying with the ancient world. That's what we do. That's why they hate Moors. That's why they wanted to say Moors involved in slavery and this and that. But these same people got police in their family. These same people work for the damn government as informants. These same people is out here feeding pork to their own people every day. That's how sick these Negroes are. So what you got to do is allow them to be sick and give them the medicine by being successful in reclaiming your piece of the empire, by going into your DNA and getting all of that out and establishing a dominion, a dominion or empire through your own private estate, and then bonding that estate with other Moorish estates. And then each estate gives donations in the name of Allah to the other estate. So I write you a trustee check, you write me a trustee check, because we're doing trust to trust banking, because we're giving each other's gifts based on the eternal account that is listed and lasted with all of the gold from and technology and land and cities and all the stuff we don't know that comes from the time of the last great upheaval, the last great plasma disturbance. So when you see them worshiping the sun, they're not worshiping the sun. They're worshiping the dark plasma synthesis that I talked about in 2000. They're worshiping the dark matter that passes through the Great Plain through what they call dark panspermia. This is what they studying at the Melanin Conference every year that they not letting no black people into. So this is what's up. This is what it is. This guy right here, this wealthy black man that they being ambiguous about, this is a portrait of Charles V with the mandible, what they call the mandible Habsburg jaw. So they try to draw white people with a big jaw like this. No, this is what he really looked like. This was him. And as you can see, he was a Moor, because they were all Moorish royalty that wanted to get right back with the empire, back with Allah, and the Anglican, Venetian, devil worshiping, dirty Moors who set up all the Freemason orders and put all of these dirty people in power was the ones working against that. And they doing it to this day, because they don't want us to understand how to control the giants when they unleash them, when they bring them back to us and try to say that they aliens. That's what they're going to do. This is why they're coming out with Godzilla, King of the Monsters. Like, I'm on it. Like, this is what it is, fam. They prepping you. They getting you ready. That's why they showed you Avengers. Look how big Thanos and the Hulk is to Iron Man. This is they giving you the post-hypnotic suggestion. They getting you ready. And the people who's supposed to be the most ready is the Moors, because we descend from the original giant killers. We descend from the ones that turn they bodies into stone and then mine them for minerals and then use them with magical principles. So they want us to believe that jasper and rubies and all of that was made by light and this. No, that's calcified blood matter. That's what that is. They want us to believe these mountains is no. These is actual calcified and bio-humanoid type of beings that existed that you guys is using that. So that oil that we think is oil, that's what you call it, coagulated blood. Look at coagulated blood and look at oil. Tell me I'm lying. They got us twisted, B. They got us on some whole other thinking that the fairy tale is the fake, and this is like reality. It's not. It's not. The spots that you in is at least 500 to 600 years older, because they added 580 years, 1,000 years to the calendar when they created the past and the future in 1581, and then remade everything in 1776, and then remade everything in 1811 and 1812, then remade everything between that time and the Civil War, then remade everything during Reconstruction. All of that happened at the same time. And our people was free in everything really up until the 1900s. So how could you be a slave from the 1600s if they didn't move slavery westwards until 1858? They didn't do the Louisiana Purchase until the 1830s. And that was a direct result of Napoleon losing the war against Haiti, which freed all of South America, because Haiti was a part of the empire, part of the United States at the time. So that's why they don't want you to be a Moor, because you are the one who carries the ancient moniker and the name of the original high priests, who was signified by the owl and many other images, who were both barbarian and Tartarian, who themselves were the ancient descendants of the pre-antediluvian world, who were made kings and rulers by Allah itself and have been hated ever since. So we are the truest Christians because we understand Isa and know that the reason why they hang him was because that's what they do to the Christ, which is why they hung all of us. You understand? So between them, there's the house Gulif and the house Ibelline. You can watch the movie Kingdom of Heaven and gets into that. And they made us forget. And so the head bishop, cardinal of the College of Cardinals, is called the Maur, M-A-U-R, because they're following, again, the old Carthaginian, Phoenician, Holy Roman, ancient United Kingdom rules, which they brought over here. See, he got on the fez, and then here go the muftis, acting like they're Christians. But he really made the deal with the devil on the low. I believe it's 1438 or 1453. I'd have to do the calculations on that one in the Asiatic calendar. So again, the culprits were the Venetians, who we call the Illuminati, who used the Khazarian Jews, upgraded they selves, and put them in perpetual servitude to serve them. And they are the black boule people and all of that run everything today and keep us enslaved through false imagery and promoting the ideal that white is better. Because that was a direct affront to how the old Yacubian Moors of the 12 tribes that ran Europa saw white people. They treated them like crap at the bottom, like peons, because the Moors, are descendants of Europa, and Europa was the daughter of Phoenicia. So again, we talking about Moors. So on your right is a picture of Henry VIII, one of the rare pictures of him as he was, allegedly. See his head? See how he got the elongated head? And look at your man. Look at your man. Look at your man. So when you see the image of the adoration of the Christ and the three kings is bringing Christ the pineal organs, the ancient batteries, this is what he's giving them. The frankincense and the myrrh are the activations for the battery, which is why it illuminates the light that they depicted in the pictures. Do you understand? It's not magic, it's science. It's all Moorish science. They got us at odds, but we are the Hebrews, the Egyptians, we all of it and none of it at the same time, because in the end, we know it all comes from us. There's a character in the Hulk called the Leader, and they patterned him after Henry VIII. There was a comic book where he tried to have like 8 wives and stuff, flip it. All other pictures, you see him looking white, but this is Henry VIII, allegedly. Here go them with the ancient battery. And so when everything was passed over, they passed on the battery to whoever was taking over. And that's how they did it. So that's kind of it. So Garvey, like I said, all being good, he was great, but essentially he was being funded also by the American colonization with them Black Masons that was trying to move over and take over Liberia, which is why it's so Masonically messed up now, whatever. That was all part of that. And what's his name, Hoover and A. Philip Randolph and a lot of those guys was down with all that. And the Moors was the opposite. They was about fortifying and building the communities and rebuilding everything after the Great Destruction. So those white boys that had descended from the Civil War and had won the land and killed enough Moors and giants, they was able to now live on the land and have black people serve them in certain places. And then eventually they basically started seeding land, marrying with them, having babies, and eventually everything, European law became the law of the land. So they had to get rid of all of the Moors that spoke Latin, Hebrew, everything else that was against it, fighting back. So these Aboriginal Algonquin people that's talking about they descended from the Cherokees that was there at the fall and all of that, the ones that wasn't fighting, the ones that Andrew Jackson, if they are claiming descendancy really from those white Indians that Andrew Jackson brought in when he said that he was going to acknowledge them as Indians. And they are the descendants of the invading Mongol hordes that came with the Golden Horde of Gengis, who were given land as prisoners of war and escapees or refugees in the Amazon forests and those places like that, as well as those so-called plain Indians that started to work with the white man against us. When they talk about the Indians that was enslaving people, that's because Indian don't mean Indian. Indian is a Portuguese Latin word, which means los in Dios. Los in Dios. Lost from God. So when these dudes are saying I'm an Indian this and I'm an Aboriginal this without claiming a real clan or nation, and if they're claiming descendancy from these tribes that made these treaties that the white man violated, they are claiming descendancy from people that's not even their direct ancestors. They claiming it from the invaders, and they are saying that they are absent of God. That's what Indian come from. It's Los en Dios. Indian. So when you say the Indian, you're saying the godless. And you wonder why they slaughtered them and they give them no respect and do nothing. Because they know they're not the original people. They came over as slaves, really, of Gengis to fight for him against the dirty Spaniards and stuff that was benefiting from the fall, who were all being bankrolled by, again, the Venetian fake oligarchy under Cantolini, Loyola, Mazzini, who started the mafia, Musanios, who started the Opus Dei and all of those fake Freemasonry clubs, and was the great-great-grandfather or ancestor or somehow related to Crowley. Then there was Sortsey, who got Henry VIII all caught up in the sex magic and trying to have sex with all the wives and help mess up the empire from there. And they was all practicing Sarpe, English cult situations, because they was all English dudes following a Venetian who were really following ancient pagan dirty Moorish magic. And then from there we get John Donne, Francis Bacon, John Dee, the Herbert family, who was descended from the Bush family. And the Sarpe method was to start religious wars to keep humanity locked down under the dome and for them to figure a way out. So according to Hillary Clinton, they done shot up at least 15. They got 18 million holes in the dome, but it hasn't cracked yet, but they almost there. She calls it the glass ceiling. Look it up on the internet. But what they don't know, if they crack that thing, all of the boundaries and the waters of heaven is coming down and it's over for everybody. But maybe that's what they got to do. So to do that, they got to take the genetics of the original woman, turn her into a beast of burden to incarnate a whole race of new mestizo mulattoes that will take their place and keep the war against Allah going. It's that simple. And the Freemasonry is the tie that binds it all together. That's what gets the whole planet seduced and all of that. So all of these sacrifices, all stuff going on. See right here, you got them setting up the Jed pillar. So when you see them, the Egyptian people, Egyptologists, fake dudes, and they tell you that when you see this on top of his head, that was the double crown to represent the double Egypt. It's not. It's not. What it is a tuning fork that allows him to tap into the battery. See? The tuning fork that taps into the circular battery that goes down the 3 shaft into the actual column, right? That is grounded into the mortar, which powers the building. And who's setting it up? giants. For who? Us. Why? Because Allah told them to. And we made it happen. So if you could prove, so if somebody could say it's something different, let them do that. But in the end, when you start seeing the Tartaria and they start talking about that, just know that's going back to when the planet was Asia. And these white folks want to act like they built these buildings and all that. But the significance of the architecture is that it's the same everywhere, but the people who did it are reminiscent of these clans that they was a part of. And some of them may have been grafted in through the wild Caucasians, but in the end, they were grafted themselves. So these races are now trying to graft themselves back into us before the actual end come. And everybody find out who the real Illuminati is and all of that. That's it. So, again, ain't no aliens built the pyramids. The alien was you. You know what I'm saying? There's nothing new. All of these buildings been here. We've been doing all of this. It's not true. I showed you the giants blown up in the aquifer in the back of the house, and I showed you the giants sitting down looking at them. So now you can go back in your Bible, and now when you read Genesis and you read that, read it from the perspective of a scientist and focus on what they talk about with the ark, how it worked, how it's set up, all of that. Because all of that was the technology that was left for you to harness it. Because that is what was saved from James, who united the kingdom of Yaqub and the sons of Yaqub, which were their white creations, right? Basically married in as the slave of Esau and then forsook and took his birthright. Told people he was a homosexual that had sex with his mother and all this other stuff. But he was also okay to a degree to coming over here and taking the land from the Delaware Moors. See what I'm saying? At certain times too. So he guilty of the same thing. But that's how the European Moors was. That's what made us very different as Muslims, as Moroccans, because we were really the inheritors of the ancient Tulan and Dath and the Fomorians and the Phoenicians and the Phrygians and the Parthenians and the Thracians and these ancient Ans who became Khans and who ruled the world when it was Asia and were distinctly different genetically from the so-called African. And still are. Next time you out and you read Africa and you see Africans, next time see how many Africans you see with beards. Think about that. I don't mean African Americans. I mean Africans born with. This is a model of the Colossus. You can type this up and see the actual joint. I was trying to find the original picture. This is an actual mountain, a giant that was calcified, and eventually they built a monastery, whatever, in his back. This is real, a real place. This, they say, was a dragon's nest. That's why people into Game of Thrones and all that. But that's all in your history. That's all in your oral history. That's all in your Moroccan history. When it talks about the Moors who subdued the giants in the at the Atlas, and how the Moor during the Garamant, who were the Moors that fought with Hannibal against Rome, how they had the giant mammoth elephants, the mastodons that we brought over here with the camels that was already here. So yeah, Moors, that's part of it. Next week I'll show you the other stuff and all that. But yeah, man, this is what's really going down. They trying to co-opt this, and there's some people that's doing it free of any type of racial indignation. But if they talking about this whole subject and they leaving out the Moors and the Barbaries and the ancient Asiatics and the ancient 12 tribe connection to the ancient Egypt, which was Misraim over here, which was ancient Canaan and all of that over here. And they not talking about how that all related and how that all got reconsolidated through our nationality. Now, you'll never find a treaty of any Indian tribe doing any international business with any other international conglomerate. The only way they could do that was through us. And that's why they don't like us, because they actually are descended from the people, from the fake Indians, or claiming descent from the fake Indians that signed them whack treaties with those people and eventually agreed to be moved and redesignated as Negroes. We descend from the Moors, those Moors that had the treaties that they had to make with us because we was enslaving and trying to put things back together so hard that they timed certain battles with the great upheavals like the New Madrid earthquake, which you need to research because that is evidence of the last, that we are still in the time of the deluge, the last flood. And they took you out of that time visually to make you think that we exist in a scientific world when I just showed and proved to you that these people, Cantilini and Newton and the rest of these people, were basically foreign agents who acted as Moors and look because they look like Moors, but were part of the Christian Moorish thing and started to set up these fake accounts under these names, the same way these guys is doing today. You understand? They concealing this. No human being that we know built this. For all we know, this is one of the calcified giants that they made stand still and basically just gets calcified on top of the pedestal that they established. These people did not do it. You understand? So the reason why we don't know history and we hate ourselves as black people and all of that, and they want to blame Rothschild and these people, that's because they hide in the real families, the Sasson, the Bacon, the Marquis de Melion, like all of these type of niggas that they don't even talk to you about. These were the real founders of that. The so-called Venetian order, black nobility that took over everything. So they all serving the same people. And it all started with Loyola, Isabella, Ferdinand, which is why everybody hated Spain, because they eventually led way for Venice based upon the fact that we Moors lost our noble nature and started to ally with other kingdoms against ourselves. So the founder of the Mafia, Mazzini, the founder of the Jesuits, Loyola, the founder of the International Freemasonic Orders, Musanios, the founder of what we today call modern science, Newtonism and Miltonism and all of that, all of the popes who were basically following that, all of the CIA, sex, stuff like that came from Sortsey. All of the religious wars that we've been dealing with is a form of Sarpeism. You understand? Before Darwinism, before all the stuff these niggas is trying to shade it with, they don't want to get into this aspect of it because now this is way too intellectual for the average Negro to really understand how to navigate this now, because these are the people that's running the financial situations and got the Moors locked up. And so their agents they use, just like they say the people that fake shot Malcolm X. Malcolm X was shot by a rifle from the balcony. They gave them niggas blanks and let them take the fall for it because they was being funded by the police through Hoover. The reason why Hoover wanted King to commit suicide was because Michael King tried to commit suicide twice when he was a little boy. So he was trying to trigger him through MK Ultra programming that they gave him when he went to go get the Nobel Peace Prize and all that. And so by the time his program started to fall off, that's when they got Jesse and them in there and it shut him down. Jesse having Caribbean roots. So how is it that? So the people who burnt down the White House and all of the old structures that I'm showing you and all that, a lot of them was from the islands. And then those ones from the islands, as a reward, was given the land up in what they call Nova Scotia, because they was also descended from the ancient Scotian Moors from England. And those Moors was the ones that created hockey. What's his name? Matthew Henson, who is Taraji P. Henson's alleged grandfather, is related to them people. But all these people that they put in our community to make us look horrible are all from different parts of the world. So how then is the identity, the stereotype of the black male really the black male? It's not. It's an invention. Media Takeout is owned by a Nigerian. Bossip is owned by a Senegalese person. You understand? They all doing the same thing, fam. They all agents. They all was here from the beginning to make us believe that how black people act is how they really act, when this was an act that was perpetuated through them through the talented 10th universities and the Freemasonic black organizations that were working in tandem to hide the true lineage and the descendants of the pre-Atlantean antediluvian world, who descended into the great tribes, clans and nations of both the Moors of Barbary and the Moors of ancient Tartary, who both were of the Asiatic race and used their grace and splendor to free the whole world during the Dark Ages. And that's it. So, whatever else they're going to say, I suggest you just let them say it and get on with what you got to do. Get your things straight to get your money up so we can get a whole community, buy these things back, because now these buildings is going basically for nothing. So again, no hate. I don't hate no Africans. Don't hate no Egyptians. Don't hate no niggas think they're African, whatever. Get your thing straight. Get your clan right. Get your estate up. Get your trust up. Get your passport and what you got to get through your national identity. Make the proper delineation. Put them on notice. Start to get with a good temple, good community, inshallah. And then we start practicing group economics and just quietly start buying stuff up, putting people in it. And then that's it. So that way, when the time comes and the plasma thing happens, we prepared. We know how to harness the energy. We know how to survive the whole thing because we know already understood that this been happening. This happened every 250 years. The world restarts. So we're about to go through that again. So everybody's trying to hide who's really going to benefit from it. It's going to be us. It got to be us. It got to be. So like I said, this is Genghis Khan, man. This is it. And I'm going to shut it down. This is Genghis Khan. Look at the Tartary fez. Look at the fezes. Look at the Moorish Diljaba. Look at the Diljaba on the Khazarian slave. Look. Them begging for their life. Begging. Here's the king of Rus under the great Khan. Begging him to beseech the Khan not to wipe out the whole structure. Look at the giant Egyptian on the back, on the side. Why would they paint him black? Why would they paint him black higher than everybody on an Egyptian throne holding a Tartarian energy weapon? Wearing a red fez. Okay? So let them keep telling you that this happened. Every lie they done told about us and everything they want us to make us doubt ourselves for is what they're going to have to, Allah going to make them drink double the cup. Watch. They don't already sent the Allah done already sent the locusts to Saudi Arabia.
Yes.
He don't already sent them. He don't already sent the lightning strikes out there. They don't already been flooded because they waging a silent war against the Berbers, the Moors, the Tuaregs, and the Hausas, and all of that, and some of the Bantus in the Western Sahara, as well as the descendants of the Nabateans and the Sabaeans in Yemen. So they all about to get it. So these purple skies you seeing, it's all related. So, inshallah. Thank you, Moore. So again, this is the descendant. This is who's really running it. That's why Indonesia got all the gold in the world, because that's the gold hoard going all the way back to before the times of Noah that niggas been building onto, that basically belong to all the Asiatic empires. And that's us. So that's why they want you to be an African. All because he is the son of the other Moor I showed you. Again, I already showed you the giants. Oh, hold up. Oh, I thought I showed you. Thought you saw it. Yeah, Brother Talano. He was the brother. She was the brother of Queen Victoria, because Queen Victoria's father was a Moor. Can't find the picture again, but that was him. So yeah, so they're gonna hate. Oh, lastly, so I could show you again. the people who ran the Dutch at the time and the Spanish. King Sancho the Great in 925 was the king of Pamplona and Navarre, one of the four kingdoms that backed the Reconquista. Look at him. This is Sancho. Now, is that a white man? So if he looked like that, you really think Isabel and Ferdinand was white? Look, that's Sancho. That's Sancho the Great. These were the Moors that wanted to eat pork, that wanted to have all the white women, that wanted to do all of that. And so the traditional Moors knew that they had that appetite and would sell them to white women and all of that and get money off of them. And they would eventually go broke. And when they went broke and they couldn't get no more money, that's when they would want to fight and start the Reconquista up again. And then the Moors would import more white women, send them to them, and then the whole cycle would start all over again. You understand? This is what's going on. And this was a Dutchman in the 1800s. This is what Dutch people, real Dutch people look like. They were replaced by the Khazarian Swiss. So when we say that we are Moors, we're saying that we are part of the ancient nobility of Earth that descend from the original 12 tribes that founded all of the ancient kingdoms that started after the antediluvian world. And we are part of the high priesthood, the guardians of the earth plane, which is why the HJR 75 says that they came from the plains of Morocco, which is why the prophet said that you are plain rich, which is why Elijah Muhammad discussed the mother plane. He talking about the whole plane, all of the centric rings on the lands that live outside the border of the ice ring and the dome of the firmament. We got dominion over all of that to the point we shut them down, to the point we turn these niggas into rocks. So you understand why they need to exterminate as many of us as possible before this really get out, before people take people like me really seriously. This is why I don't strive to, you see how I roll. I don't strive to be out there trying to really talk about how much I got and this and that. Nah, deal with the people directly. Like ain't no more talking to you about Cantilini and Loyola and Mazzini and all of that. They're not going to do that. Sortsy. They don't read books like the Machiavellian Principle. They make you think like Machiavelli wrote that from the perspective that he was that's what you were supposed to do. No, he was like Shakespeare. He wrote that as a satire to the mind state of the dirty Venetians that was posing as that was really backing the bleached out papacy that was trying to replace the Moors of Bavaria and the Moors and the United Kingdom, the UK. So I think that's it. So yeah, that's why they don't want you to be with the more Science Temple, because it's gonna tie you back to the real bread, which is the land. And so if there was no BC time period, all that means that we've never been out of it. It's all in our minds. And so Allah is going to manifest again for us to be able to take control of these people and shut them down the way that Sultan Mohammed did when he took control of ancient Egypt again and tacked the heads of the Mamelukes to the gates. This is what's coming for them. So when the forces come, you're going to think it's a joke. This is the same guy that took the head of in 1453 or descended from him. Next week, I'm going to show you the guy that took Constantinople and how he really looked. See how it says Maroc, Maroc, and how under this Morocco, everybody looked like you. See that? No, they want you to be a Muslim. No, well, you see what's coming for the Muslims. As much people that was there in Mecca this year, whatever, That ain't stop Allah from sending the locusts. So we need to start thinking about the Mecca over here. Need to think about, Cairo, Missouri, instead of, Cairo, Egypt over there. So, inshallah. Thank you guys for coming through. Thank you for coming through. Evidence of Tartaria Part 2, Buildings and Frequency Harmonics of Moorish Barbary. I might post this in between the other joint, continuation of the joint I got up now. So I might just post this on YouTube. Either way, thank you. Again, thank you for coming through. Thank you for the $30 to gmail.com. And thanks for, again, taking time to not drink the Kool-Aid. Peace. So again, respect to the prophets, respect to the original orders of man, respect to the original woman, respect to all of the Moors, all of the Asiatics, all of the so-called Africans who understand that we have to be under our own vine and fig tree. And that us bigging ourselves up is not us dissing them. And anybody trying to force you to be anything other than what you say that you are is an agent. Peace.